Karen was going to read it. Didn't Karen say that yesterday?
First and most importantly, I'd like to thank our organization, the City of Tucson manager, his administrative and executive leadership team, as well as department directors and everyone that have contributed to making our vaccines available at the TCC pod. All of the supportive work and dedication of city employees to do their job, frontline workers from police and firefighters to our environmental service truck drivers to our parks and recreation workers. Everyone have really stepped up to keep our community safe and to keep the services that our residents need going. I do want to be very clear that we need to continue reminding our residents of a few things, that there are variants going throughout our country, and that we still, even though we've been vaccinated, that we still need to wear our face coverings or masks. We need to make sure that we're keeping our distance from others and remain vigilant to make sure that that we have this pandemic under control. And so it sounds like about 37% of Pima County residents who are eligible for vaccinations have been vaccinated. The great news is that countrywide, people over 16 years of age can take the vaccine, including right here in the Tucson Convention Center pod, as well as El Pueblo and the University of Arizona in other locations. So I just wanted to open up by acknowledging the amazing work that our team has been doing, working hand in hand with Pima County to bring this pandemic under control. With that, I'd like to hand it over to the city manager that will give us a few updates on vaccination pods and other news on COVID-19.
Sure, Mayor. Thank you. So first of all, just a quick update and a reminder, we are still providing testing at the El Pueblo Center. That is the testing site also for TUSD. So we're partnering with ASU through a state contract to get testing. So if members of the public or you're hearing anything out there about folks that might need to be tested, we are still providing that testing. We also did double check with Dr. Cullen, and there is no need for increasing of testing. There's no demand increase there, so we'll continue down that same path. With regard to the pods, the points of distribution, as you know, we're involved in two. One is El Pueblo. I'll start there. It was offering Johnson & Johnson vaccines up until last week. On Wednesday, it switched to Moderna. Some of the federal government had pulled back on the Johnson & Johnson, so we have switched over to Moderna. We have seen a trickle in comparison to what we'd seen at TCC at El Pueblo. Working with our partners at the county, they're going to be doing some door hangers in the area and the region surrounding El Pueblo to try to drum up business, if you will. We're also going to shift hours a little bit. We're going to have them open from 4 to 8 p.m. Try to capture those folks that might be getting off work that weren't able to come in and get their vaccines. So next Monday, the new hours will be from 9:30 to 1:30, and then from 4 to 8, and those are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we're going to keep trying to tweak it, if you will, to make that available to folks so that we can get more people vaccinated. With regard to the TCC, we are at approximately 1,000 appointments per day. You know from previous reports, our capacity is about 2,500. I have asked the staff to start thinking about scaling back our presence there a little bit because, obviously if we have overcapacity, I'd rather have those folks back at their regular job duties. If needed, we can always remobilize back up at the TCC. So again, going well overall. We are starting to see quite a slowdown on vaccinations. I know that Mayor, during your call with the region's mayors, the county did mention they are going to boost the media attention and really encouraging. I can't emphasize it enough. I've emphasized it to our employees to get in and get vaccinated. I've encouraged them to get their families down. We have capacity, so it's important for not only those in the city family, if you will, but also in the community to get vaccinated. Mayor, I just very quickly wanted to give you a quick update. You remember that the city received just shy of $17 million as a part of the emergency rental and utility assistance program. We have a portal that's now up and running. That I'll give you the. It's a dashboard. The website is TucsonEP.com, and EP stands for Eviction Prevention. You can actually see the number of folks that are going through the system, and if somebody has applied, they can actually track their application through the system. We've had in excess of 7,500 households that have applied. The CIC has either processed or in process about 1,300 of those already, so we're really pleased with that. And again, it's only been open, if you will, for about 4 weeks, so we're seeing a pretty good ramp up of that service. Also, we did receive notice through a press release, so we hadn't actually gotten it ourselves, but we did see a press release from HUD that there's going to be about $12.8 million of home money available to the city of Tucson. What's unique about this is that traditionally, well, first and foremost, it's about 4 times what we normally get. But for the first time, we're actually going to be able to use it for homelessness, which home monies have traditionally not been allowed to be used for. So I just thought I'd give you a heads up that that's coming. Don't have any more detail on that at this point, but I just wanted to let you know there's some potential good news on the horizon. So with that, Mayor, that concludes my COVID update. I'm happy to answer any other questions from you or from the council.
Any questions from my colleagues?
Madam Mayor, Mike,
Councilmember Fimbres.
have we got any more information on the homeless issue, how we can use that funding?
Mayor, Councilmember Fimbres, no, sir. Basically, the guidance that we've gotten at this point is that those monies will be available to combat homelessness using the Housing First model, et cetera. But because we haven't gotten any specific guidance, I can't guide you on that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, by the way, Mayor, just a quick point. You had mentioned 16 plus. Yes, 16 plus is open and making sure that there is some information that goes out on that. We'll make sure that people are aware that it's 16 plus on the vaccines.
And Mr. Ortega, how many city employees have been vaccinated? Do we have a percentage of our employees who've been vaccinated and got the double dosage or the single dose?
Sure, Mayor, Councilmember Fimbres, I don't have the exact number due to some HIPAA challenges. I can't go around and ask folks to tell me that. We are hopeful and expecting. I've actually made that clear that my expectation is that all city employees will take the vaccine. I have heard numbers as high as 80% in some areas and as low as 30% in other areas. So in probably the 60% range is what I'm estimating, but I really don't have anything other than anecdotal conversations that I've had with some of the directors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Fimbres. I don't see any other hands up or any other questions. Thank you so much, Mr. City Manager. We can move on to the item 2, which is the budget. And we do have item 3, which is the local restrictions on home-based hair salons. There's a request to, because of some of the presenters to be there to be able to speak at 1:30. I want to make sure that we can allow for that item to be at 1:30, but I do not want to cut our budget discussion short. So, Mr. Manager, go ahead. Let's move on to item 2. Time has been set aside for a financial presentation and continued discussion of the fiscal year 21-22 budget. Mr. Manager.
Sure, Mayor, and we will be sensitive to the time, and if there's some ongoing dialogue, we can pause, go to that item 3, and then we'll get into the next piece. So, Mayor and Council, quick update on the market study. We had talked about that during the last budget discussion. I plan to have that back to you for consideration at the May 4th meeting. We are scrubbing the data, as I mentioned to you. There's 3 pieces to it that I'm expecting I'm going to bring back to you. One is a recommendation on the market study, and that's what you've already heard kind of generally in terms of magnitude. 2, as you know, I put a placeholder in for a minimum of 2% for those employees that have not been addressed as a part of the market. And the third piece, which is new, if you will, but have been thinking about for a while, is bring to you a recommendation on how we would address long tenured employees that are not going to be addressed by the market because they're already at that market rate, but recognizing that they have actually been with us, if you will, through thick and thin. And so I'm going to bring back some strategies and some ideas on that for you to consider at the next meeting. So I'm just kind of giving you that as a thought for next time. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff Yates to go over some of the financial info that was previously presented to you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Honorable Mayor and council members. So we have just a brief presentation today, and you'll see it's similar to what you saw in our last meeting, just with some updated numbers and some changes. So I'll really focus on the changes and talk through a couple of those components for you. So we're going to look at the general fund and the HERF funds. So there we go. So as you can see, we're estimating the annual over under to be about 59.1 million. That's largely being driven by the FTA revenue that we've talked about already coming in, our lost revenue reimbursement. So this is a placeholder based on our initial analysis of the funds or the lost revenue the city will be able to recover from the ARP. So the way that works, or the guidance we've gotten so far, it's not been completely explained, but you take 2019's actual compared to 2020 actual, and that right now is our difference and what we would consider just the losses in revenue. So we're looking at that, and then these are the payroll reimbursements for which we put the CRF funding. Now, the one thing I'll tell you, and we didn't include it in here, is it's our intent that those funds will be restricted for other use. So they fall in the model right now to the bottom line, but those will go into kind of a allocated bucket a little bit later. A couple of other things on the 22 budget. We've made a couple of tweaks. The biggest one being we adjusted our medical insurance estimate. We had started with an initial estimate and then back that down to what we're seeing actual claims working with our consultant. So we really, at this point, we're able to take a $2.2 million deduct in 2022. So we're really tracking the changes. As Mike mentioned, based on our modeling, we have about a savings of about $804,000 next year for those annual pay adjustments based on initial estimate. And remember, from our last discussion, that's due to vacancy savings. So that's really the net impact of vacancy and salary increases. Then you also have that 2% placeholder for the non-market adjustment. So your net difference is about $300,000 between those two components. So with that, we also have the additional FTA money programmed in as a funding source, and then also have it coming out. And we have the $9.1 million fare box. The manager and the manager's office and team are working through the supplemental requests and those to be able to bring those to you on the 4th. So there's still some work to be done. We continue to see a good year, strong revenues, strong expenditure, about $24 million over revenue over expenditures. And remember that is in addition to the $30 million deficit that we made up, because we had programmed a $30 million deficit in the prior year.
Good job, Pat.
So with that,
hold on, Jeff. Hold on. Councilmember Fimbres, if you could mute yourself, thank you.
Sorry, Mayor. So actual year to date, and remember, this is a cash flow number. So right now, we've seen $45.6 million more revenue than expenditure, but this just depends on when we take our snapshot, because we are booking expenditures and revenues daily. And I will tell you, part of the reason why this is at 45.6 now is because we are getting ready to book a large PSPRS payment of roughly $20 to $25 million. So that's why that number ebbs and flows every month. It's really what it matters is where you settle out, because no 2 months are the same in local government, right? So we're right on track. As you can see, we're about 77% of our budget on revenue and about 65% on expenditures, and we'll see that go up just a little bit. So that's good comparative to history, because so that's what expected is history versus year to date. When we look at the HERF funding, we've looked at the revenues similar to the general fund, and there's a little over $1 million, about $1 million, and we haven't entered that into this calculation yet. But at this point, there's an estimated almost $3.9 million year-end use of fund balance, and that's primarily driven by some additional streets projects and some additional improvements and some costs at HERF, and I believe those were outlined in detail in the supplemental materials we sent out yesterday, so I won't belabor those. But you can see we've programmed in part of that neighborhood roads project to balance that with the funding that is here. So that's the additional funding right there. So those two are tied together. That won't be exactly how it works out on an accounting basis, but for the purposes of discussion, we've included them that way. So you can see those now. And we are tracking, of course, the fund balance going across. And over the into the 2026 window, we see that being about $2.1 million, which is a positive because we built this fund balance with the intent of using it for streets. And that's the goal. So we're working through that process. And then we see the same, we're at about $11 million difference. But I can tell you in HERF, one of the reasons why we are behind a little bit on expenditures at only about 50% through 3/4 of the year is because of our debt payment. We have a debt payment coming up. So that'll push that number up. It's about 20% of that budget is that debt payment. So we'll make that debt payment, and then that'll be more in line with what you would expect to see. So with that, I'll answer any questions. I know I went through that relatively quickly, but this was all material and things you've seen before. We've just been updating those based on kind of the changes we've seen.
It looks like we have a very healthy general fund, and I'm really happy that we're, really making sure that we're considering market rate increases for our city workers. I don't see, and I don't know if you're taking this under consideration, Jeff, that right now there's a conversation happening at the state legislature about the possibility of Governor Ducey cutting taxes here in Arizona. It seems as though the city of Tucson would stand to lose approximately $17 million over the first 3 years of that proposal because we depend on state shared revenue. The other proposal in the state legislature is that the state create a 2.5 flat income tax rate. And that proposal is being driven by the House Majority Leader, Ben Toma, which would cause the state to lose approximately $1.5 billion annually. This would amount to about $225 million annually impact to cities. So under this proposal, which is the 2.5% flat income tax rate, the city of Tucson would stand to lose about $21 million annually. I hate to be the boo bird here, but I do want us to at least take a look at what is happening in the state and how it could affect our budget. Mr. Ortega.
Sure, Mayor. Thank you. And those are unfortunately very sobering numbers when you look at 17 million over the first 3 years of its implementation, and then potentially an additional 21 million. Those numbers are huge, and I'm glad that Jeff left this up because if you look at the bottom line, we could withstand 1 year of what the mayor and council really has worked hard to build up in terms of reserves. But after that, we're in really serious challenges. And so what that basically means is cut back to services. You know, the services that the charter requires, the services that our residents require and need would have to suffer. So what I've done is I'm asking the staff to go through and dissect what those cuts look like and what we would need to do as an organization to be ready for them. I'm hoping that they don't gain legs, but we have to be prepared. And so some of that information, Mary, that you just read is relatively new, relatively recent. And so we are trying to react to it and give you some guidance. I can tell you that no matter how you look at it, those will be significant hits if in fact they come to play. It will be a very difficult for us to overcome without making serious cuts into our service levels, including public safety.
Well, and it's very irresponsible for state legislators to use one-time funding in terms of CARES Act and American Rescue Plan to offset these permanent tax cuts. But, you know, it would be very debilitating in terms of how it hits cities and towns across Arizona. And like you said, Mr. Manager, it would really impact even what we're planning on doing this year and moving into the next 5 fiscal years regarding market rate increases, being able to maintain our workers and their health insurance, our PSPRS payments. I mean, it really could impact the funding priorities that mayor and council have set forth in our budget. So I just want to make sure that we have scenario B and scenario C just in case those income tax cuts are passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor. I'm really happy also to see the $14 million of HERF investment, not just in 22, but also in 23. That means that's $28 million invested into repaving residential roads. It's very good. Thank you, Mr. Manager, for looking ahead and following the advice of mayor and council. And I just want to make sure that we're looking at directing HERF funds directly into both residential road repair and arterial repair within the city of Tucson as much as we possibly can, because I've seen over and over that the biggest portions of HERF funds are invested in professional services and other services and payroll. So I just want to make sure that we continue it with putting much more into road repair. Other than that, do my colleagues have any questions on the council? I don't see any other hands up. Alrighty. So with that, then we're going to move to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Mr. Ortega.
Thank you.
If you all have any questions, you can always offline with City Manager Ortega or Jeff. So with that, let's go to item 3. Item 3, Vice Mayor Lee and Council Member Kasachik have requested a discussion on local restrictions on home-based hair salons. Vice Mayor Lee or Council Member Kasachik, if you want to pick it up from here.
Nikki, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Steve. I just wanted to start out by thanking Councilmember Kozaczek again for including me in what I think is going to be very significant in terms of expanding opportunity for people in this profession in Tucson, which is really important. I know that a lot of us have shifted to working from home for a variety of reasons. It's really enhanced our lives personally and for our families. So I'm really excited that we're having this conversation in the study session today to talk about how we can remove some impediments to these professionals who are wanting to start doing more of this business inside of their home setting. So Steve, take it away.
Okay, thanks. I just lost I'll go back. The State Department of Health Services has jurisdiction over health standards for hair salons. And the state does allow home-based salons as long as they have a separate entrance and a separate restroom for clients. Those are state mandates. We don't have authority to change them, but I'll swing back to that at the end of this little brief opening. Our city codes allow some home-based businesses as long as they're restricted to no outside employees and one client at a time. Those are really to protect residential areas from excess traffic and parking issues. But our city codes do prohibit home-based medical businesses, home-based auto repair, and home-based hair salons. As Nikki mentioned, since COVID, we're all reimagining what employment looks like, and the beauty industry really took a slam during the pandemic. They're also finding that many customers prefer sort of a one-on-one setting as opposed to going into a big salon with people all around. Years ago, the county dropped its restriction on home-based salons. They used to have one as well. We still have ours in place, as I mentioned, with auto mechanics and what was the other one I mentioned? Medical businesses. So today we've got 3 local stylists who can share how COVID has impacted their businesses and how this change will be beneficial. We've got Jen Proctor, then Linda Paredes and Shani Gerald. They'll hang out and answer any questions after they each give a brief opening comment. Really, at the end of this, though, the motion is pretty simple, and that is to remove hair salons from our current list of restricted home-based businesses. The goal, as Nikki said, is to make the option as accessible as possible. The state mandate for a separate entrance and separate restroom based on state health standards, if there is a way that the city could help people who don't have the ability to fund that, to maybe leap that hurdle, that'd be great too. We don't have authority to rescind it. But what we can do is we can take the home salons, hair salons off of our restricted home-based list. With that, Jen, you have your team assembled in your living room, I assume, and you go ahead and take it from there.
All right. Thank you guys so much for seeing us today. I'm Jen Proctor. So I've been a Tucsonan since I was 1 year old. My parents moved here in 1978. And one of the things that I think, I really think of Tucson as like my home and community based. And one of my biggest disappointments because of COVID was the lack of community support in the salon industry. And I worked with Shani, and Linda and I have worked together in the past also. And what we found was, I think COVID did we've all been kind of navigating this the best that we can. And one of the things that's really hard for us as self-employed renters is our rent cost as a sole proprietorship, like chair renter, is our biggest business cost. So landlords were given, our salon owners were given free rent, like options of PPP loans and other business buyouts, but they didn't let that trickle down to their employees. So we went from maybe having between 4 to 6 clients a day to maybe 4 clients a week. Mm-hmm. So trying to fund a mortgage payment, a rent payment, business supplies, it's been a real struggle. So the 3 of us have actually found ourselves pretty much out of work. And we have been putting our heads together, thinking of creative ways and creative outlets, like how to make money, how can we do this like an alternate route. And actually, we know that state board allows home-based hair business. So we were looking at the state regulations. So we had contractors come out to our homes, I think all three of us actually, to figure out cost of separate bathroom, separate entrance, how we can manage, like if we could get PPP loans or other funding, we could put that money into our home to like have a self-based business. Our clients didn't want to go into a business where we had multiple hairstylists. They felt safe in a one-on-one environment. And then we found out that Tucson city limits restricted a home-based hair business. So we all three are homeowners. And so it wasn't really an option to sell my home and move to the county. So that would be probably like a bigger, throw a bigger wrench in my business plan. I'm a single, self-employed female. I'm 43 years old. I've been self-employed for 18 years. And one of the things I'm like super proud of myself, because a lot of women in this business do this as a second income. And it's I feel like I'm pretty fierce to be able to like maintain and sustain my business without a second income. But one of the things for me that I think is, how am I going to retire? So in the last few years, I've been thinking like, how do I have my own business? Mm-hmm. One of the best ways for me to put an extra around $10,000 a year is to put it in my own home. Yeah. So instead of paying it to somebody else, I pay it to myself. And at 43, losing your business completely, starting over again, that's something that I've been thinking like, okay, one of the best ways for me is a home-based hair business. So that's why I started actually in probably September, October, calling different people that work with the city. I finally talked to the zoning and a man in zoning and planning, talking about zoning my home. And he's suggested that I start with my ward guy, which is Steve Kay, and I'm really grateful for his work in this. And so that's why we're going this route. It's probably a lot faster and a lot cheaper for me, which right now, having like pretty much lost my business, and we're all figuring out ways. We've done some pandemic unemployment, some PPP loans. I've done other home-based hair job or like home-based business, not hair. I did food prep for people. I have my degree also. I applied for other jobs, but really my passion is in this industry. One of the things that I think I have a bachelor's in psychology from the university, and one of the greatest parts of my job is like the self-esteem factor. So it's like this relationship that you build and develop, and I'm like, it's not into like the superficial part of the job. It's fun, but really it's that idea that when people leave, they leave feeling better about themselves, mm-hmm. and we make a connection. Mm-hmm. So for me, like as a middle-aged, self-employed, single female, this to me would be like the best, like one of the biggest pushes and help for me so that I could like get my foot forward again and put that money like into my retirement account at this point rather than into another business owner. And I really feel disappointed that we didn't have that. Like, I feel like that Tucson community and helping your neighbors is like a huge part of why I love to live here. Right. And so it was really disappointing and upsetting. We've all three had that conversation about our salon owners, like not really having our backs during probably like the entire world went through a trauma simultaneously. And so it's really interesting because I think that what we've seen is like it's brought out like kind of some ugliness, but also there are some things of like great beauty that have happened in times of trauma. And you see like there's like food deprivation around the country and people are getting together and feeding each other. And that's what like I really feel like blessed to have these two women, especially in particular, like in my corner, because we have really been working together, like brainstorming, coming up with possible internet business ideas and other ways. And this idea for all of us, I think, has been like our like number one. This is how we're going to like succeed in the time of stress and trauma. Yeah.
Linda, Shawnee.
Hi. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name's Linda Paredes. I have been a hairdresser for over 20 years, and I've owned and ran my own small business for over 20 years, and I'm also a single mom. So of course, everything hit, having the kids at home, not being able to go to work. And when we did, like Jen said, we were only maybe 4 clients a week. So to pay our mortgage and keep our sustainability has been really hard. The thing about the three of us that I have noticed is that we are, I'm born and raised here in Tucson, and we pay our taxes, and we also play by the rules, especially through Arizona State Board of Cosmetology, being able to have our license for so long. And they have prepped us to maintain a healthy, safe environment for not only ourselves, but our community and everyone around us. And being able to be in this business has allowed for us to also help our community, not only through donating our services and our time, but also financially as well. This is something that I've been doing for my whole life by myself as a single mom. Fortunately enough, I have not had to rely so much on anything that has happened around the world, like as far as having to have that crutch of state assistance. Fortunately for me, I've been able to do this and feed my family and myself. But one of the things that we were really concerned about is if we don't act on something where we can use our home and also comply through Arizona State Board of Cosmetology, is that we all have YouTube. We all have those things where people are like, hey, just color your hair yourself or cut your own hair, or hey, guess what? I'm pretty good at cutting my own hair. Let me cut yours. And then they nip someone's ear. And then we have a blood procedure that we go by. And we have to learn that to make sure that we don't get any of that blood everywhere on ourselves or anyone else. So nipping the ears, chemical burns, people think that it's just so easy peasy, and then also taking advantage of the fact that they will have paying customers in their homes, and then also being able to receive unemployment maybe, or some form of assistance, and then not contributing it back to the city, not paying their taxes, or not even contributing at all to the city licensing fees and all. And that for me as a small business owner was one of the things that I thought, hey, if we can do this, we can all benefit together, especially like as a single mom as well. I can work out of my home and have my children in a safe environment for any reason. If there's a breakout at the school, or my child is sick, or whatever have you, the things that we've been going through, I don't have to necessarily have an extra sitter or anything. They're in a safe environment with me.
Yeah, I can add to that. Hi, everyone. Thank you for meeting with us. I can add to that in the sense of I found out that when our kids do return back to school, my 5 that I have at home are anywhere from first grade to a senior in high school, and she will be graduating with the cosmetology license as well this May. So we're breeding young women that can take care of themselves and that can contribute to society. And if they get sick or a breakout happens at their school, they have to be out for at least 10 days, even with the doctor's note. So that gives us really nowhere to put our children. And for me, I am married 27 years to my high school sweetheart. And when the pandemic hit, they tried to force him into retirement. We have a local school system that was not very nice to him. He was right at 19 years. So what he did was he took his entire retirement as cash to be able to make sure we had something. And that messes with our actual retirement. So this pandemic has changed the whole dynamic of what we're going to do for our retirement, and for me not to be working and to rely on unemployment because my kids are working at school at home. I want to be able to work at home and be able to help to put away some of that retirement that my husband sacrificed because of the pandemic. So we can sterilize and sanitize and be in control of our own environment, because we've been taught that through state board, and we can regulate how many people come and all of those things. When you're in a salon setting, you are left to the maturity or immaturity of your other coworkers, which leads me to the ethnicity issue. So I work with ethnic hair. I am Irish, Scottish, Native American, Yaqui. My mom is Mexican. My dad is African American and Blackfoot Native. So I love culture, and I love living in Arizona because, like, we get culture, and we love being in our community. And in the salon, it is kind of hard to be around other cultures with specific and African American culture. The spotlight is on us. Everybody wants to ask questions. Everybody wants to touch the hair, grab our children's puffs, and things like that. We don't allow people touching now, but even before then, it was an issue. So I was always a person who had to buy the extra back room. So I have to pay more. So I pay a mortgage at my house, and I pay about a mortgage working in a salon. So when the pandemic hit, much like Jen was talking about, there were perks for the business owner, but I'm still paying the same amount I pay for my 4-bedroom, 2-bath house for a room to be able to hide my clients. And specifically, I also have clients that have issues with hair loss. So I have not a degree, but a certificate that I earned in Atlanta, Georgia, and it is a non-surgical hair loss replacement. So I work with people who have male pattern baldness or baldness from cancer or whatnot. I need that room. I need to pay for that. And I'm offering security, safety, sterilization, sanitation, and also, just being there for that person in a private, intimate moment. And I can no longer afford that. 1, 2 people coming, and these are high-risk people. They're not going to come out, to a place where they have to pass through so many different individuals. So I'm a little more complicated, but it all reads the same. My kids are going to school at home. I can be there for them. I can help with my 1st grader. I can keep my 7th grader on task. I can keep checking in with my high schoolers, making sure they're on that class and they're not trying to leave the house, But if I work in a salon, I'm going to have to rebuild my client base, and I'm going to have to hope that the teenagers can help with the younger ones during this pandemic. So I would appreciate and be hopeful that you all will vote for us to be able to be those women that stick up. Remember the slogan of the woman with the fist? We can do it. We hold it down during war. We're trying to be strong for our family and our community. We don't want to get the handout, So we appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. The motion is very simple: to remove hair salons from our current list of restricted home-based businesses, and whatever else we can do, I'm all ears.
That's a second on that.
So there's a motion and the second on the floor, and I do see Karen, Councilmember Ulick's hand up.
Yeah, hey, I just want to thank the 3 of you so much, because this group at this table, we're constantly trying to find strategies to support entrepreneurs, to uplift families and women, and you have brought us an opportunity that is, I hope, going to be meaningful in your lives, and I know will be meaningful in a whole lot of people's lives. And I don't know what media representation we have here watching, but I hope they follow up with you, because you really are offering a great gift and what tremendous leadership on your part to bring this to us. So thank you to the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Kozaczyk, and thank you to you. It's really inspiring to meet you, and I feel deep gratitude to all 3 of you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to reiterate Councilmember Ulick's thanks to you all for showing up, for having your voice heard, for thinking creatively of how to best be able to practice your craft and your knowledge and your talents from home. I want to make sure that we are creating a path towards success for your home-based business, and not creating any any issues that unintended consequences of the actions that we take today. So we have to be very very strategic and thoughtful in our approach to being able to grant you the opportunity to practice your business at home. I do see Councilmember Santa Cruz's hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to second yours and Councilmember Ulick's comments. I know it's a big deal to like come together as like friends and small business owners and talk about the issues that y'all are experiencing and some of the ways that the city can meet those needs. So thank you for participating and having this civic engagement with us. I'm curious about like what is the next step. I am concerned about creating some like unintended barriers. I know that there's also being born and raised here, there's like a whole informal economy around hair and cut style, all of that. And so I want to make sure that we're not creating some other restrictions or some, criminalizing folks in an unintended way for other, kinds of home-based, more informal home-based, hairstyling. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but just curious about what's the next step from here.
Can I interject something?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so there are so state board has rules and regulations around what is allowed, like with a license and without a license. Yeah. So, and it's very clear, like a lot of people that do home-based hair for like braiding or hairstyling, like people will do like makeup and wedding updos, as long as it's hair manipulation, people don't have to have a license. So licensing happens when we're using any like chemical. Mm-hmm. So if somebody is running a hair salon using like hair color, hair straighteners, and they're not licensed, that is actually, it's a safety issue and it's a legal issue across the board. So those kind of like secret hair salons really shouldn't happen anyway, but it would never intrude on somebody's ability to like have their, like the, like how you said, like the, the back door, like I'm going to go get my hair braided or I'm going to get my hair styled, all of that. And it's very clearly like in Arizona State Board of Cosmetology, and they update their rules all the time. And so we have to check in pretty much, it's about once a year that we check in when they change rules. And that is one thing that I think that actually used to be, you have to be licensed for that, and they changed that, and it's actually like a cool thing, because it does, like, it's again like when you're talking like ethnic hairstyles, some of those hairstyles, it's a styling, but that's not when you're doing like color and chemical treatments, and there's a whole business for at-home braiding and other things. And I think that's why State Board lifted that regulation, because it really does, like, it's much more inclusive that way. Mm-hmm. And so really we're talking about for people who are a licensed hairstylist also. Yeah.
And every 2 years we have to get our license renewed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to be up on it.
And the technical question, I don't know, council member, if you got your concern or your question answered.
Well, the question, no, for them, yeah, thank you for that. No, I'm asking, city manager, city attorney, what happens next?
Yeah, so Mr. Manager, or maybe we ask this question to Scott Clark regarding planning and development services protocol and procedures.
Honorable Mayor and Council, home-based businesses are in the Unified Development Code. This would require that we simply put hair salons back in there, remove the strike-through that's currently on there, and they'd be authorized again. There's a business licensing fee of $50 annually that they have to pay to business licensing. But that's really it as far as we were concerned. The one question I had was, there's currently a limitation to 5 customers a day. Do you want us to explore going up to a higher number of customers? Because I'm envisioning they can probably get 8 or 10 a day in there.
And I do see the group of strong, wonderful women.
Scott, that was exactly.
Opinion. I see that you have an opinion.
Well, that was exactly the question I asked too, because if you're going to like cost cutters, they run you through 5 an hour, and that's not what we're talking about here. But I'll totally leave that up to the experts, because obviously I'm not.
Yeah, I would say that really depends on the kind of business that you have. So me, like my specialty is like color. So I do like cuts and colors. So your average time spent with one client is 2 hours. So 5 for me is really reasonable, because that's 10 hours of work a day if I'm doing 5 colors. Now, if I have like we actually call it a super cuts day too. Like it happens in a salon where everybody gets a haircut. You may end up with 8 haircuts in a day. Yeah. But I think that for us, that would be a matter of like managing our schedule wisely. Like so it's like if I'm allowed 5 a day, maybe I'll disperse my color, and then like, you throw your random people who just get a haircut interspersed through the week. So if that is I think that's a good idea
to try to expand it. Like what Jen is saying, we only normally do a certain amount, but there are times that we would need to be able to
Christmas
do more.
Time.
Christmas time, holidays, and then right after Christmas, everybody forgets about it. But and that's why we save our money. But yeah, I think that would be a great idea to expand it.
Expanding it for sure, more than 5, especially. I'm already thinking numbers. What 5 would only be for us a day, and that would maybe be a sustainable amount for the week, but for the whole month, it wouldn't be ideal.
What if we made it 10? Because we have to balance it against people living next door to you also, and parking and traffic. What if it was 10 reasonable, or is that still restrictive?
I think 10 is reasonable.
Very reasonable, yeah.
Mr. Manager, did you want to jump in?
Mayor, I just wanted to answer the question, but Scott already answered it, so I'm fine with that. Thank you.
And I do see Councilmember.
Mayor, I think the other piece to this, it's no more than 1 at a time. So what you can physically put through, as you've already heard, is really the key. And so without being too restrictive, but also managing the expectations of neighbors.
Yeah. Right, because we want to make sure that parking, all of that is reasonable for the neighbors. Councilmember Fimbres, you have your hand up. Would you like to?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I wanted to have Councilman Kosacic reiterate the motion. And I agree that the expansion of up to 10 could be the possibility, especially with men's hair. The cut is a lot simpler than styling and cutting the women's hair, which is good. And I applaud the efforts, and thank you for bringing this forward.
My hair is very simply put a baseball cap on me and trim around the edges. We're done. So that's easy. The motion is very simply to remove hair salons from our current list of restricted home-based businesses and increase the maximum number to 10 per day.
Okay. And you got a second on that?
Nikki did.
Second,
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I want to reiterate thanks to Jen, Shani, and Linda for taking the time out. And I think you've lost your kid behind you in the curtains somewhere. Okay.
Mr. Clark, did you need any further direction on this item?
Honorable Mayor and Council, we are good to go.
Okay, so there's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Great job. Wonderful advocacy to the 3 of you.
Thank you, all 3.
Alrighty, thank you. Now we're going to move on. Item 4 has been continued. What I'm going to do so that we can have a good, thoughtful discussion on this, I am going to move item 8 to be considered next. This is the Central Business District Stakeholder Working Group. Let's see, just wanted to make sure that I have all of the information. Barbara Coffey will present an updated draft of the GPLED policy framework for the Central Business District and present to us the stakeholder working group meetings that have been happening throughout the month of March and into April, and any further input and feedback from the process that Mayor and Council gave direction to. So with that, item 8, time has been set aside for an update on the Central Business District Stakeholder Working Group. Mr. Manager.
Sorry, Mayor, just trying to unmute there. So as you already opened the item, Mayor, I'd like to turn it over to Barbara Coffey. Has a good report on the efforts to date, and we're obviously looking for comments from Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. And good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of Council. We're back this afternoon with the report out of the work of the Stakeholder Working Group. We were charged with developing an action plan and an auditing strategy for our GPLET program, and to review the community feedback received over the last few months, in addition to the research by Dr. Paivo, in order to provide recommendations to you on the future of this program. Our working group consisted of 13 members, not including our Economic Initiative staff and Ward Office staff members. The 13 members represented commercial property owners, developers, architects, neighborhood and planning organization representatives, small and legacy business owners, the Pasquayaki tribe, and our bridge builders who assisted the community meetings we held in January. This group rolled up their sleeves. They did some heavy lifting, as these issues are complex and challenging, requiring a delicate balancing act as it relates to the recommendations to be shared with you today. Please note, we're not asking for adoption of the proposed modified boundary today, nor the GPLET policy framework. We will take your direction today and bring back these items for your consideration on June 22nd, which allows time for all required public notification and additional outreach. With that, I'd like to hand it over to one of our 3 bridge builders, Francisca Villegas, to share comments. Recall, our bridge builders were tasked with extending outreach to the community on this topic and ensuring diverse participation. In particular, Ms. Villegas was a powerful voice for the small business community. So with that, Frankie.
Thank you. Buenas tardes. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity. As I was listening to the previous business owners, I got very emotional, because those are the businesses that we want to help. We want to make sure these opportunities are available for them. And through conversation with the small businesses, they made it clear that they want to work with the city. They want to be an alliance to the city, and they want to make sure the resources, all they're asking is for technical assistance and financial support, so they can have access to the benefits of, larger entities. They also are asking for, job creation, access to the resources, so that they can be the future GPLET projects. So exactly what the previous ladies were sharing with you, all of you, those are the businesses that we want to help. Those are the businesses that we have in mind as we go through this presentation, and you're going to hear more from Shay and Corky, but my conversation is around helping small businesses, minority, women-owned. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And the previous presentation made it very easy for me to explain what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you for your time.
And so Shay or Corky, who would like to take it next?
Thanks, Barbara. This is Corky Poster. I'll go next. The bridge builders were really pleased to be involved in this really extraordinary process. Staff was very welcoming, and the meetings went very smoothly. As you recall, we participated in 7 ward-based meetings in January. And then in late February, March, and early April, we participated in 5 separate stakeholder meetings. And we started to get a very clear sense of what the issues were. Sheree is going to give a much more detailed overview of our recommendations. But I just want to say that one of the things that we had almost unanimous support for is the notion of supporting affordable housing. As you probably know, the GPLET doesn't do well on affordable housing. For technical reasons, it can't support LIHTC projects. And so we worked hard in trying to figure out ways that this process could also support all of the support that we heard for affordable housing in the meetings we attended. So I'm going to pass this to Sheree Jimenez, the third bridge builder, and she will give you a much more elaborate summary of the work that we did in the report that we prepared based on what we heard. So I'm going to mute and thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Is everything working? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here, Honorable Mayor and Council. You know, my name is Sheree Jimenez. I also go by Shay. That's fine. I also am a small business owner, and I've been working a lot with small homeowners who want to do small residential infill, additions, expansions. Again, I'm just seeing a huge need right now in this time of COVID for families to expand. So again, it just dovetails so well with everything everyone's experiencing and explaining it as far as home businesses and supporting that, as well as, you know, families, their ability to expand and to have multiple even units on the same property as we're going through this ADU ordinance. Again, there's just such a need for flexibility right now with the home. You know, with the CBD and G-Play, this is, you know, I would say it was a tough one because this is an economic tool that is large, and it's, you know, it's primarily been benefiting, you know, large scale, you know, multi-million-dollar projects. It's hard. It's going to be a hard program, I think, to scale down. That being said, we did try to influence the process to make the application very easy for everyone to understand. It's been streamlined. I think it's going to be easier for everyone, big or small. It's very clear now, the steps and what you need to do to apply for the GPLET. We've also have put in a little caveat for a fee waiver for small business, smaller projects, which I think is also a great addition. So we did what we could to try to make this friendlier, this economic tool friendlier for small business, but also realizing that there are probably better tools out there and other tools that need to be developed to support smaller business. So, you know, and I think what we all gleaned and what I gleaned the most from the PIVAL report was that the best we can do with this GPLET is to mitigate the negative impacts. And so we've outlined kind of 3 areas that we hope that some of the funding that's available, that's been generated by this amazingly successful project, that some of those funds can be diverted again to help mitigate those negative impacts that we're seeing and that are have been concerns that have been addressed by the community. And so those 3 areas are, again, as Korchke mentioned, the affordable housing, especially trying to support the smaller to mid-scale housing development, what we call the missing middle kind of development, you know, as well as, you know, getting more LIHTC projects as well here in Tucson, I think is also another, you know, common concern as I'm on the Equitable Housing Commission that's coming up. You know, we are only winning 1 of these a year. How do we win more, you know, and support that? Secondly is the small business development. As Frankie mentioned very well, you know, getting that technical support, getting access to loans, you know, even is a huge issue. We don't have some of kind of, I feel like in low-income communities of color, we don't have that. On paper, we don't look so good, but it doesn't mean that the cash isn't there. And so how do we, again, get that technical assistance to support folks in becoming and retaining ownership in their neighborhoods, as far as both legacy business and legacy families who are homeowners and who own property. And then thirdly is the neighborhood improvements that we would try to divert some of this funding into the you know, neighborhood improvements that people want to see. And I think this one is more geographic based, where we want to see like park improvements and street, you know, improvements in those neighborhoods that are more adjacent to the CBD, so they can see the direct benefits to their community of this program. So that's it in a nutshell. If anyone else wants to add anything.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, I just want to appreciate all the members of the working group, but especially the three of you. And I know there's a couple others that are joining us on the meeting today, and then the rest of the group is watching, I'm sure. So again, hats off to the hard work that we did and that we had these tough conversations. So briefly, Mayor and council members, how the work of the stakeholder group translated into the draft GPLET policy. Key additions include the alignment with the development goals of the incentive infill district. We felt these matched many of the same goals that the community has expressed a desire to see in order to achieve quality development. So GPLET, the tool, should be used to attract infill development that is equitable, sustainable, and diverse, that is pedestrian friendly and transit oriented, that includes public open space and safe connections between neighborhoods and business, that protects historic structures and neighborhoods, provides design standards for sensitive transitions between development and existing single family residences. In addition, projects may also demonstrate the commitment to community benefits such as clean and green, which is the environmental sustainability activities, executed community benefits agreements, hiring of local contractors, legacy business retention, mobility enhancement and or parking amenities, partnerships to achieve affordable and or workforce housing, public enhancement, which is the public art, open space, placemaking activities that Shay likened to in her comments, small and local business job creation, again, that Frankie has been talking a lot about. And key additions to the draft GPLET policy include the requirement for a community meeting at the outset of the process. On top of that, there's a structure for convening a small stakeholder group as a secondary step to assist conversations between the developer and community stakeholders related to community benefits. The working group also recommended, as was mentioned just a minute ago, the waiver of the application fee for projects where the capital investment is less than $5 million, or where historic preservation or adaptive reuse is involved, or where the property is owned or leased by a legacy business. In addition, the audit structure is outlined and includes two key pieces. On the front end, in addition to the economic impact analysis, we would require the developer to submit project pro formas for a third-party financial review of the project to determine developer capacity, need, or gap determination, and providing associated recommendations for the project. After the project is built, then we come back for a third-party audit, would be conducted after the third year to determine if the project achieved its goals and intent of the GPLET agreement. And just a couple of notes on the proposed modified boundary. The stakeholder working group did propose a few areas for expansion, one small area for contraction as well, but the expansion areas north along I-10 to Prince, commercial areas along Grant Road and Fort Lowell between Oracle and Stone, and near I-10 and Speedway. I will also point out that staff has had subsequent discussions with Ward 5 about not including Mission Linen site and the small extension east on Broadway, so that is a discussion we are having. We've met also with the Flowing Wells and Miracle Manor neighborhood associations and have plans to meet with Keeling and Sugar Hill in May. We'll also be doing the public notifications that are required for property owners in any modified areas of the CBD boundary. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, as are those members of our Bridge Builder team, as well as the stakeholder group that are here today if you have questions. Thank you.
Barbara, thank you so much for your presentation. I know that this process has been long and hard, and there's been a lot of work and time in this effort. I want to thank you, Barbara, for believing in this direction that Mayor and Council gave you in terms of creating Bridge Builders and creating this process. Mayor and Council were very, very clear about creating an authentic community engagement process that brought in the voice of the community. And then I also want to thank our bridge builders, right, for all of their hard work, their dedication, attending each and every one of the 7 meetings, and then after that, working on their own to come up with recommendations that made sense for Mayor and Council. And, I do want to give credit where credit is due. I want to thank Councilmember Santa Cruz for thoughtfully bringing this motion to all of us on the council, and saying, hey, we need to really evaluate how this program is running, evaluate the process of applying, and evaluating what the return on investment for the community is. And so thank you, Councilmember Santa Cruz, for really thinking about this holistically and having us go through this process. In terms of looking at the report that the bridge builders and the recommendations brought, I wholeheartedly agree with your recommendations of investing in affordable housing and making sure that we have a long-term affordable housing strategy for where we want to see this central business district be and the neighborhoods surrounding it. Wholeheartedly agree with investing in small locally owned business development, and making sure that we're investing in the neighborhoods surrounding where we have the central business district. I see all of my colleagues' hands up, but I did want to comment on the GPLED policy framework. I wanted to comment on the eligibility criteria. Part of the eligibility criteria says that successful projects may also demonstrate commitment to the following types of community benefits. I want to make sure that we use a word such as shall. Successful projects shall demonstrate commitment. And particularly in the areas of demonstrating commitment to executing a community benefits agreement and hiring local union contractors, or I believe the word is worker-owned co-ops. That, I believe, is a very important piece for me, because many of the developers and companies using our GPLED projects do not always go with contractors that pay living wages or hire local workers. I want to make sure that we hire local workers and that we are using union contractors that pay living wages. If a developer is getting benefit, especially monetary benefit, from an incentive used in the city of Tucson, we want to make sure that we're exploring language requiring those contractors to provide prevailing wages as defined in the Federal Davis-Bacon Act, that they also properly classify employees as an employee rather than an independent contractor and treat them accordingly for the purposes of minimum wage, overtime, workers' compensation, insurance coverage, and all relevant taxes paid to them. This is a procurement policy we may want to consider extending to all projects in the city of Tucson, but if a developer is entering into a contract with the city of Tucson using GPLED, I believe that the workers hired to build that project should be earning living wages, and the neighborhood surrounding that project should have a well-defined benefits agreement. So that's my input, Barbara. And I do see Councilmember Santa Cruz's hand up, and then Councilmember Ulick, then Councilmember Fimbres, and then Councilmember Kozachik. Go ahead, Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Thank you, Mayor. I had to go off camera for a little bit because I had to watch the trial, the jury's verdict, on the trial of Derek Chauvin, who was being charged for the murder of George Floyd. So I just wanted, to acknowledge that it's a very emotional moment, as we're having this discussion. Just also wanted to make, my colleagues on the council aware of that. I want to thank our bridge builders, Barbara, your team again for really taking this and really trying to honor the spirit of trying to have engagement from folks in our community who aren't necessarily, at the table helping guide and make these decisions. So I, as I was, looking at the material and having, conversations with folks in the community, I also want to make sure that we're connecting the pieces and that this be presented to our commission on housing and equitable development, here in the city, so that we're all kind of on the same page about the recommendations that are being put together, and if they have additional insight to include, that they can also include it. I have a question for the bridge builders, if they could talk a little bit about the strategies that they're thinking through as far as seed funding for establishing the fund, and kind of what needs to happen next to get the ball rolling. I want to make sure that we don't lose, momentum from all the work. So I don't know if any of y'all can give us some examples.
It looks like Corky's hand is up. Corky, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I sort of want to answer your question in a general way, council member, and then sort of get to the meat of what you're getting at. We went into this process hearing a lot of folks in the community say, stop GPLET, we don't want GPLET, let's get rid of GPLET. And when we looked really closely at the process, we discovered that GPLET is a huge benefit to the city of Tucson, and in particular the city of Tucson budget. There are $409 million worth of construction that, according to staff, would not have happened unless the GPLET existed. We had 1,500 permanent jobs, 2,600 construction jobs. The net income to the city through GPLET was $33 million. And so we stopped thinking about get rid of GPLET because it seems to be a very, very successful and lucrative project. The problem is it's only lucrative for a handful of developers and only lucrative for a constituency that's able to afford those. We have a broad community, and that's fine. The question then is, where do the resources come to create the equity necessary within that program? Because the program itself really has very little ability to create equity. So the equity needs to come from somewhere else. And our strategy was pretty simple, that if there's that large amount of money flowing into the city budget, then that's the source of funding to create the equitable outcome for neighborhoods, for affordable housing, and for small businesses. So we were specific in our proposals and recommended seed money from the council general fund, I suppose, of $4 million in each of those categories to begin to create the other half of an equitable program. Because right now we only have half with GPLET. We need the other half. And so we're quite specific about funding. And we think that the GPLET has been so successful that that funding exists, and we need to invest it in our communities.
Alrighty, Shariah, go ahead.
Yes, the other thing we had discussed just internally, again, I think all these details are yet to be worked out, but was the potential for revolving loan funds. I think both with small business and with homeowners who want to make improvements, is that if we have some pots of money that are dedicated to that, again, I think with the community, I don't think people are really asking for handouts. They're asking for access to capital and cheap capital. And I think that we could very easily make that money stretch much farther and it be a self-sustaining thing if we have these revolving loan funds. And then we ask for matches, whether it's from the state or whether it's from some other boards or commissions maybe that have some money, or, raise a bond fund that towards these little pots of money that we start to grow, and that we have, again, a sustainable source, so we don't end up in this situation again where it's a crisis, where we have all these legacy businesses closing, and we have all these, homeowners who have to move out of their neighborhoods. We actually have some funds that are sustainable and regenerative, but it has to be the right group of folks. It's going to have to be people who are going to be willing to take a little bit of a risk, which banks are typically not. It's going to have to be people who are community minded, and I'm not sure that we have that institution into, not to talk bad about anyone, but it's going to be very tricky, because like I said, on paper, the kinds of communities that everyone wants to help right now, they don't look so good on paper, but that doesn't mean that the cash isn't there. If you look at the South Side, every business is performing, and generally their stores in retail especially are usually the number one in Tucson. The money is there. I think we just need that technical assistance and support, and maybe even some further studies that show that the money is there, and that these communities do deserve to be lent to.
I'd like to add to that, and thank you again for the opportunity and conversation with the small business owners. I kind of have a structure or a matrix in place of what it looks like for them, and what a system that can work for them. We know what doesn't work already, right? So in conversation and based on their feedback, we put together, like, how would that look like? So to answer the question, let's make those resources available. We have feedback from the community. They're not asking for a large amount of funds. They're asking for assistance to get to the next. They want to grow, right? These are not startups or trying an idea. These are businesses that they've been around for years. Let's think of Lindita. I had a conversation with the owners yesterday. Let's think of Rigos. They've been around. There's a proven business owners, legacy businesses. So those are the businesses that we will help them be the next GPLET, right? So I know what it looks like when it comes to helping them and providing them with technical assistance and access to capital. And these recommendations were based on what they're telling us, right? The city, the bridge builders, what that looks like.
Thank you, Frankie and Shay and Corky. And your recommendations, I think, have to be institutionalized into our systems, right? Your recommendations have to be institutionalized in our Economic Initiatives Office when it comes to small businesses, and in our Housing Community Development Department when it comes to affordability and affordable housing and neighborhood reinvestment. Councilmember Ulick, and then we go with Councilmember Fimbres.
Thank you, Mayor Romero, and thank you to all our presenters for the hard work, and Councilmember Santa Cruz. I'm so grateful that you insisted that the equity lens be brought to this, and it seems very promising. And I think it's sort of easy to adopt economic development incentives, and then see resources flow to an area, see jobs increase, and sort of stop there and not recognize that there are additional sides to that equation. And so I just so appreciate your attending to the needs of people in the areas who have already invested their own lives and livelihoods in areas and deserve access to capital, as you note, and that will, I think, just exponentially increase the impact of the GPLET in the exact ways that we want it to. And just to, again, to the presentation we saw from 3 home-based entrepreneurs who are identifying barriers and saying, hey, remove this and provide a better path for us. So I'm grateful, look forward to continued conversation as this comes together. also wanted to, just on the map, I was hoping that as you continue, if you could help to look at the area to the Santa Cruz overlay that Councilmember Durham worked so hard on with the Ward 3 team and the community. That overlay extends up to, I believe, Sweetwater Drive. And so if the if the map could reflect that, if you could assess that, we would like to see that for consistency, and also to really uplift that entire area. In addition, along Oracle and Stone, the northern boundary could go potentially as far as Roger Road, which would kind of mirror that Sweetwater boundary to the north. And I'm not assuming that that's the best decision, but I would certainly appreciate your reflections on that as you're engaging the community. I think there could be tremendous potentials expanding the map in those ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ulick. Now we go to Councilmember Fimbres, and then Councilmember Kozaczek, and then Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Corky brought up some good idea reflective of what we did in 2012 when we were looking at the Great Recession and we were dealing with that, the streetcar, and then the Jeep. We were the last city in the state to go back in to adopt the G-Plat program with Kelly Gottschalk and Mike Letcher leading the way for us and bringing it forward to us. And it saved a lot of us because we were looking at a lot of budget deficits. I remember the Great Recession caused us to go $33 million deficit, then a $44 million budget deficit, then a $55 million budget deficit, and we cut it down to 18. And then they messed with the state public safety retirement, and it ballooned back up for us. But there are a lot of things now, and we fought to keep some neighborhoods that just don't trust the city from being in the CBD map. And I would like to thank everyone who participated in the Central Business District meetings and stakeholder group meetings. It is your participation which helps the mayor and council make these important decisions which are tasked to do. I have met with representatives from neighborhood associations who do not want to be included in the CBD map, and I have worked to make sure that they are not included. The draft CBD map contains a proposed expansion in an area that the Barrio San Antonio neighborhood does not want to be included as well. Barrio Santa Rita, Barrio Santa Rosa, Barrio Viejo, South Park, and Pueblo Garden neighborhoods do not want to be part of the CBD map and have said so repeatedly. The area in question is Broadway South with Park Avenue and western boundary, and Santa Rita and eastern boundary, and 17th is the southern boundary, which is located in Barrio San Antonio. The area in question contains Mission Linen, a current environmental superfund site, as well as Project Moore School, which is operated by TUSD, and the former Red Ball trucking site, which is another environmental issue, and the Los Barrios shops. Barrio San Antonio neighborhoods have previously raised concerns about being able to get to their homes, school buses, and the Greyhound bus depot, but big trucks, the UV vehicles speeding through the neighborhoods. They have also raised concerns about the potential of increased traffic and the CBD map and the proposed Sunshine Mile overlay. I'm requesting that this area, and I've been working with Barbara, and I would thank you, Barbara, for your efforts on this. I will continue to request that the Broadway area, South Park Avenue, west of Santa Rita, East 17th Street to be taken out of the CBD map. And I like what Karen's ideas were, but looking at going into Ward 3, expanding in that area. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fimbres. Councilmember Kozaczek.
Thanks. I just have a couple of questions. And first of all, thank you to Barbara and the team for really all the hard work and all the outreach. I think it's a really good series of outcomes. Totally support the triple net priority areas that you've identified. One question on that is that I think Corky sort of answered this, or I think you did. You've identified $12 million in 3 different tranches of money at $4 million each. Is that, I guess this is sort of a time value of money question. Are you bookmarking existing revenues for those 3, or are you saying let's build up those funds to those levels with future revenues as they're generated? I don't know who's that's for. But.
I can try to answer that question. The we were proceeding from the $33 million net to the city budget based on the figures that we were shown. It seems to us that it's sort of a both and, that we should establish an initial budget based on the numbers that we put out. And as the GPLET continues to be successful, continues to produce revenue, that we have the ability to replenish that that fund. Obviously, it's a budget question. It's a mayor and council question. Our main point is that revenue is successfully flowing from GPLET, and credit to GPLET for pulling that off. But it's not an equitable value to the community, and we need to take some of that income, some of the resources into the city budget to spend money to balance. And so, you know, it's a budget question, Councilmember Kasachik, and those are not hard and fast numbers, but it's the order of magnitude that seems significant to us.
Well, and that's a legitimate answer, and it is a budget question. And so I guess the question then shifts to Barbara and to Mike and to Jeff Yates is, as we are in the middle of a budget discussion, are those $12 million programmed in to your current budget projections, or do we need to take a step back and say, let's take another look at the current budget projections or budget conversation? You know, I'm totally good with the allocations. It's just a question of how we get there and when we get there. So that's one point. Secondly, you indicated I think you said, one of you said a triannual look back audit on each of the projects. The original draft had an independent body conducting biannual CBD performance index reviews, and that was going to be the property owners within the CBD sort of pooling their data together. And I'm wondering if, in addition to the individual audits, that if there is, this might be a Sharia question, if there is a value to the credibility that the program has with the lending institutions, if we have that pooled audit or not, I don't know. I'm just asking the question, because that pooled audit was a part of the original recommendation. Do you have thoughts on that?
Barbara?
Or Sharia?
Or Sharia?
Yeah, I would think that, yes, I think that the individual audit is really important, and I like the way we discussed that in our small groups, the way it's gone, you know, hiring this independent entity to, you know, further dive into that. That's great. It's a great improvement. As everything that I'm understanding and hearing, you know, what's difficult when you're working in communities that have low value right now is that we can't sometimes get the appraisals, right? For the properties, we can't get the appraisals for the home values to then borrow against what we need to make the improvements. So that could be very helpful. I think having just showing and demonstrating from projects that have been successful, because there are projects in the South Side that are very lucrative and very successful and making a lot of money. That those comps and those examples do exist, and maybe that could be helpful moving forward.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I was headed. That if we pool the data, it might paint a more promising picture for some of the lenders, whether it's IDA, whoever it winds up being. Barbara, did you have thoughts?
I think we can take a look at that again, and that's the purpose of having this dialogue, is so that we can make those tweaks, a buffer, right, and some unbiased review and vetting of these projects and their impacts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not a lender, so I don't know what all the criteria they look at. Finally, the study suggested a stronger involvement. Stronger involvement in the city in community benefits agreements. And I'm not sure where this study landed on that and in terms of the city's involvement in the CBAs.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Mayor, Councilman Kozachik. We expressed in this draft policy framework that staff would have more of a hands-on in facilitating those conversations. So that's where we, instead, in prior times, we sort of have taken the stance that developer and the neighborhoods would figure it out on their own. But we have since changed our thought on that, and that we can absolutely help convene that opportunity. So when we have our first initial community meeting, when we very first begin conversations with a developer looking at this tool for their project, we state the intention and the requirement of the community meeting. So we have that first meeting, and then from there we determine who the stakeholders are that are interested in the outcomes of this project and the impacts that it may have. And then we can convene the next meetings, which can involve the formation of a 6-member stakeholder group, such that it's similar to what we just almost went through here with this process, exploring where we are now, where we had a working group. So we put that working group together with the developer, and we're part of those conversations. You know, we tend to be involved anyway. It's just now we're going to have it in a more organized fashion and making sure that both parties are talking to each other and that our intention of the program is met in that way.
Right. And realizing that we can't compel a particular outcome, but 100% of these GPLETs are discretionary. So we can kind of compel them. But thanks, Mayor.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Good afternoon. I have a couple easy ones. One, I really want to reiterate my request that we use some money for a CBD compliance officer within the city. If we have these CBDs, they have to be able to be enforced. One of the problems we've had is we've had some issues with CBDs being adhered to. So when we're talking about that $4 million or whatever we're pulling back out of revenues, there needs to be CBD compliance. I've brought that up a couple times, and I know if we're going to require CBDs, we want CBDs, we have to have CBD compliance. The other piece is, and this is actually out of the blue. You guys don't know this one's coming. This one, my wheels got turned today by this discussion. I think it's interesting. We're going to have the opportunity at some point, this council is, and I want to try to stay within our agenda. So Mr. Attorney Mike Rankin's on the line. Make sure to stop me if I'm wrong. But if we do enter into a partnership with another community, such as, say, South Tucson, before I really was hesitant to talk to South Tucson about them having their own CBD because of the gentrification issues and the equity issues that were associated with GPLETs, quite frankly. But with our model, I think we've got that opportunity now. If we can put this model and put all the things that we've outlined into it, we'll have a pretty good model. The other thing we can do is set some money aside so that some of those legacy businesses could come in and loan from us. We'll be the loaner. And what'll happen is we'll get South 6 back the way we want it, which is what it should be. Look, I want the South 6 from when I was 20, which was a long, long time ago, but still, that's what I remember. That's what I want. South 4, South 6. I want to go to Crossroads. I want there to be soccer at the old racetrack. That's the type of stuff I'm thinking about. And I think we can get there. I think there's some golden opportunities. We could even do it where it stretches into, so it's maybe the Desert Inn could get some work done. And Corky, I know you're going to want to be a part of that project. So I think there's some opportunity there if we can kind of fold this in. So I'm going to keep it like conceptual, but I see like just some of the reactions of people. They're like, wait a minute, that could work. So I think we need to get with the mayor and of South Tucson and kind of see what roadmap we want with our communities collaborating and partnering in the future. So that's kind of where I'll open that up, and we'll probably see an agenda item to this in the next month. So that's my thing. And other than that, I'm going to sit back and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. And there's so many pieces that are moving in this particular puzzle. But I do hear, I attended a few of the Central Business District meetings. Again, I want to thank Barbara and your team. Thank you very much for introducing the residents of the city of Tucson and mayor and council to Poonam, for her amazing facilitation, to the bridge builders for their work and their continued investment of time and effort into this effort. Again, I want to make sure that we're clear about what we need to institutionalizing still, right? We need to institutionalize better investment for our neighborhoods in terms of their infrastructure and quality of life. We need to institutionalize more access to capital for our small and legacy businesses. And we need to make sure that we institutionalize, in terms of budgeting, funds for affordable housing. And not just for creating new opportunities for affordable housing, but for housing first options, for making sure that we keep housing that is affordable now affordable for the families that live there, because if we do that, we are going to prevent displacement in communities where we have not typically seen investment in, and that is the concern that this conversation first started with, right? The conversation that sent us into this process was the concern from the community about gentrification and displacement. And so we've got to institutionalize all of this work and all of this investment in terms of affordability and small businesses and neighborhoods. So I don't see any other hands up. I do see Councilmember Fimbres' hand up. I don't know if it was from the previous.
It's from the previous one, Madam Mayor. I'll take it down.
So Barbara, do you have all of the feedback input that you need to move forward to the next step?
Yes, we will take everything we heard today and make some revisions, and then have some information back to you all for review before we come back to council.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the work today.
Thank you.
All righty. So what I'll do next is it's very related to this particular item 9. Let me grab the information. Item 9 is an item that I requested to create a affordable housing development corporation in the city of Tucson. And before I start with item 9, though, I'm a little lost in terms of words, because we just heard, as Councilmember Santa Cruz mentioned earlier, we just heard the results of the trial of Eric Chauvin, and I wanted to just make sure that I shared with you all that we take a little bit of a breather and that we shared what is in front of us today. And Mr. Rankin might just stop me, but I just want to acknowledge that justice was served and delivered today for George Floyd. While this ruling provides some degree of relief, the work to root out racism is not over, and we still have to do a lot of work as a country to deliver equity within our court systems and other systems that are rooted in racism and that treat communities of color differently. So I'm happy that of the result of what we heard today, that our courts delivered justice to George Floyd and his family, and I'm hoping that we can work together to have a more just and equitable world. So I wanted to say something, because we had heard during this item of the results. So now on to item 9. Item 9 is, like, again, I said, I requested to have a conversation about a community development corporation. And I wanted to move this item with the Central Business District conversation because I think that the city of Tucson has left the creation and development of affordable housing in the hands of either nonprofit developers or other developers within the city of Tucson. And for almost a year now, I've been having discussions with the city manager and with Liz Morales about, taking that that direction and that vision and that goal of creating much more affordable housing within the city of Tucson in our hands. And so we, the city of Tucson, we need to explore opportunities to create affordability within the city of Tucson, whether it's through a development corporation or other creative approaches so that we become, we jump into the driver's seat as a city and direct how we create affordability in the city of Tucson. And so one of the ideas presented to you today will be the concept of a affordable housing development corporation. And so I'll have Ms. Liz Morales present to you all so that we can at least look at the possibility, at the concept. I want you all to give me your advice, your feedback, poke holes in what is being presented today. And at the end of the day, continue analyzing how the city of Tucson can really take the driver's seat and have a transformational approach to looking at how we build affordable housing in our city. So with that, I'm going to call the item. Item 9, I have requested time to discuss for a discussion regarding how the city of Tucson can become its own developer for affordable housing. I'd like to invite Liz Morales to present to us today.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. It is a great privilege to share this presentation. I do want to also thank you, Mayor, for your vision, for being instrumental in helping us really focus in on how we can develop more affordable housing in-house. And I really like the analogy of getting in the driver's seat. As an agency, we have been very much involved in development of our nonprofit developers who get low-income housing tax credits. So as much as we've been involved as a funder, I do see tremendous opportunity for us to be able to do development in addition to our nonprofit developers and other private developers who have been taking the large share of developing affordable housing. So I do want to thank those nonprofit developers. I want to say we just want to be part of the solution and to work in parallel with our developers. I'd like to share a presentation with you. I should say a PowerPoint here. Let me start here. Can I confirm, Mayor, that you can see the presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Just to give you a brief background, as you know, we have been working on a housing market study. We do plan to bring the final phase of the gaps analysis, but what I can give you a sneak peek is that the results are confirm what we already know, is that we need more affordable housing units in the region. And so knowing what that says and what we know in experiencing it and hearing it from our community residents, that is not surprising, and it just reinforces the need for us to do more. We also, in the fall of 2020, began working with an experienced affordable housing consultant. His name's Ramon Guajardo with Ramel Company out of Fort Worth, Texas. And Ramon is unique in that he has experience as a former assistant city manager, as well as significant development consulting with public housing agencies. In this work that we've done with Ramon, it's since the fall, he has provided some preliminary strategic advice on options and mechanisms for the city to consider to help increase affordable housing production. He believes the first key step is to establish clear goals and expected outcomes regarding affordable housing. Also, we know that there's best practices that we can look at. HUD has long been encouraging PHAs to expand beyond the federal housing funding that we receive and move into other funding mechanisms to develop affordable housing. And we know other communities, both here in Arizona and outside of Arizona, and they have used successfully used other mechanisms and variety of ways of developing affordable housing. Even under previous administration, more than 20 years ago, the Housing and Community Development was very instrumental in developing some excellent projects here in Tucson. And we just are ready to take that helm over again and and have that in-house expertise. And I do want to share under lessons learned in hearing from other people, there is a question around how is this different than what we've done in the past. And I can tell you at one time, the city did create a Metropolitan Housing Corporation, and it was set up as a nonprofit with a board of directors apart from the city. And MHC has been a great partner with the city, and we have partnered on several projects. The topic for today is different than the model of MHC. We are exploring the best way to develop affordable housing in a manner in which the assets and decision-making is retained with the city of Tucson. So, Mayor, you talked about a vision, and I'd like to share where I think the vision can be and should be for the city of Tucson. I believe that we should look at development as a wide range of housing options in the right location with access to food, health, and education. We should also look at it from a smart investment, that we conduct thorough financial reviews and pro formas that result in high-performing projects, and that we look for return on investment, that we have a well-managed portfolio with stable funding source that allows us to do more development as we move along. I want to briefly share some examples. I'm very fortunate to have great working relationships with our fellow housing authorities, and would like to just share three very different models, but they all work well. First, the city of Yuma, that is actually one of the only standalone PHAs in Arizona. But they also created a separate nonprofit called Arizona Housing Development Corporation, and they have a separate board and they collaborate with PHAs on projects. Then you have the city of Phoenix, and they use a different model in which each affordable housing project is created under its own instrumentality and has a board of 3 members, which consists of high-level city personnel, like the CFO, assistant city manager, deputy city manager. They also utilize other options such as single asset limited liability corporations, and also have a developer entity so they can collect the developer fees for low-income housing tax credit projects. And third, the Housing Authority of Maricopa County creates their housing through the PHA, but each project is done under a legal partnership where the county leases the land and has the right of first refusal after the Light Tech project ends. They also created a nonprofit called GEM Housing Solutions for the purposes of philanthropic and donations for resident services. They are also applying for the Section 202 funding, which provides housing for older adults, which HUD only allows applications from nonprofits. The nonprofit at the Housing Authority of Maricopa County is comprised of 3 board members appointed by the Board of Supervisors, which are identified as the agency's executive director, finance officer, and administrator. So looking at these three examples, again, just it reiterates that there is many ways to do this. So I'd like to offer some next steps and what that might look like for Mayor and Council consideration. First, an immediate timeline, I believe we should look and focus on projects to start development and identify the appropriate legal structure that can do the following. One, retain control of the city assets and keep it so that either we keep the land piece or the whole project. Also look at who are the decision makers, and also to ensure that we protect the other assets and ensure that we have future development. And also we should utilize finance and development experts. Let me just stick to my notes here. We recently just closed a request for proposal, which will give us a pool of consultants that will provide two functions. One would be for planning, program, and project development support, and the second would be affordable housing financial support and implementation. The difference is just again on expertise, where one pool of consultants that we can draw from could help us prepare development plans, develop market assessments, and also look at housing targets. The second pool of consultants could assist us with developing financing recommendations, conducting underwriting and preparing performas, identifying financial implications, and also preparing low-income housing tax credit applications on our behalf. Short term, which is within the next year to 5 years, I believe there's some great opportunities. In talking with my colleagues and other housing agencies, often their work was around their public housing assets. We have an opportunity and are getting technical assistance to convert our public housing into RAD, which is rental assistance demonstration, or other eligible actions. And I believe that's a great way for us to start and develop that plan. And I do plan on coming back to Mayor and Council in the fall or sooner if we can get a good plan put together. And I also believe, Mayor and Council, I would love to create goals around number of units and a timeline in which we could utilize our Commission on Equitable Housing and Development to help us develop that. Long range, I do think we have the opportunity to be an experienced self-developer. And I believe part of that is to have set defined criteria for all projects that we do, much like what we were talking about with CBD. But looking at having set terms that's part of the institution, saying any project we do has long-term affordability, that it's improved quality housing, that has access to public transportation and proximity to employment opportunities. These are just a few ways that we can do that. We can add to this list, but I do believe that for the long range term, we definitely need to have a set criteria for any development that has any kind of city investment or support should adhere to. So Mayor, that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate Liz's presentation and for you really working hand in hand with me and my staff on researching and doing the preliminary work of exploring the creation of our own affordable housing corporation within the city of Tucson. I want to make sure that our colleagues understand that the vision that I first approached Liz and the manager with last summer was that we create, as I said, our own destiny in terms of not waiting around for other developers to build affordability in our city. You know, sitting through those Central Business District community engagement meetings, I heard loud and clear from our community that that we need affordable housing and different types of affordable housing and the retention, not just the creation of affordable housing. And so this has been something that that I approached Liz with in terms of an idea. And the good thing that Liz and our city manager, Michael Ortega, are well experienced. They knew exactly what I was talking about when I approached them, and they started moving towards doing the research necessary to have this item here with you today. So the vision is clear. The vehicle that will take us there is something that we need to continue discussing. And I would like for not just my colleagues on the council to add their voices to this, but I really would like my colleagues on the council to consider that we also take these ideas, these concepts, to the Affordable or Equitable Development, Housing and Development Commission, so that they can add their voices to this conversation. So with that, Councilmember Ulick, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Romero, and also Liz for the presentation and the great work. And I appreciate I reached out to Liz prior to the meeting and had, as you can imagine, questions and some concerns because having been involved in affordable housing development for quite some time, the more players there are in the mix, the more you can inadvertently compete against each other, bump into each other, maybe not even bring added value per se, just another sort of set of players in the rubric. I know that Mayor Romero, you had the right vision in terms of just making sure that we're leveraging every opportunity the city can and adding every tool we might need to do the very best we can. And I, after speaking with you, Liz, I have absolute confidence that you and your team understand the dynamics. We have a pretty robust nonprofit and for-profit development community, but our position is unique. Even relative to the county and to our community land trusts, we do have a unique position that we might leverage better. So I do have a motion I could put on the floor, Mayor Romero, if you'd like, and then move into further discussion, or would you prefer that I wait?
Go ahead, Councilmember Ulick.
Okay, so my motion is that I would direct, I move that we direct city staff to work with the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development to explore and provide recommendations on the different legal entities available to the City of Tucson for the expansion of affordable housing through development, as well as examining what the appropriate financial vehicles we can use in order to advance the City of Tucson's affordable housing goals.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
So
I have a question after that.
You bet.
In a second, go ahead, Richard.
Liz, I applaud your efforts, and Mayor, your vision, and Mike, your getting things done. Can the Mayor and Council be reminded about the Federal Economic Opportunity Act of 1964? And I may be a part of this discussion and agenda item. Liz?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Fimbres, you know, the act was very instrumental in ensuring that there was opportunities to do considerable investment in disinvested areas and urban areas where there lacked a lot of the basic needs. And you know, I was really interested in reading up on that, in that Robert Kennedy was able to institute the first community development corporation that focused on poverty. So, you know, I believe that the spirit of that act is really what we're trying to do, is find a way to develop in our community to address the needs of affordable housing. And we know that affordable housing is foundational to helping people address many other needs, whether it's, you know, just to be able to ensure that they're not overpaying or overburdened with their housing costs, which doesn't allow them to do the other necessary things related to food and education and healthcare. So, you know, housing is critical so that we can help our residents achieve greater outcomes in their lives and quality.
Appreciate it, Liz, and thank you for your efforts. And I see we have, like we said, a lot of nonprofits and agencies that here in this work in this community for a lot of years, and they could be part of an advisory board for us to help us down the road. So thank you, guys, and thank you for your vision, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Fimbres. Any other of my colleagues? I see Councilmember Santa Cruz's hand up.
I just wanted to share my gratitude, Mayor and Liz, for your work on this. I know that this has been, again, a missing link in our broader goal towards housing affordability and accessibility. So thank you for continuing to push us and make sure that we're moving in a good direction. Gracias.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Cunningham?
So a few things. I mean, I think looking at the Bedford-Stuyvesant model and kind of going down that path with, and if we, I actually like the other idea of having this as an adjunct to the city. I like it. I think that actually we will divert from that model, but I'm good. I think that we'll run into some municipal corporation, some laws impeding on how we can lend money and what we're exactly allowed to do. I think there'll be some barriers there, but I like it that we're going to be the only ones going it like this. So I'd like to see that model where we merge what Phoenix did with what the group in New York did in the 60s, and obviously take from the mistakes they learned, because they weren't successful at first, but ultimately we get to be in that position where we're optimizing results. What I will say is that much like some of the other things, we're going to draft a plan, but I don't want to get caught up in drafting a plan too much. I want to have, within about a year, I want to have some kind of like model project ready to go. Something that's modest, something that doesn't cost a lot, but where the finance mechanisms, the neighborhood stake mechanisms, and the corporate structure, nonprofit corporate structure, or city commission structure, however we're doing it, or maybe even both, where we have a commission that also serves as a nonprofit board of directors, which is groundbreaking stuff. Like, no one's doing that. So I'd like to see that go through, and I'll challenge you guys all I can. If you want any help in how to structure it, I'm here for suggestions that the manager and the attorney's office can gladly shoot down. But at the end, what we come up with, it needs to be original, and it needs to be something that's for Tucson. It's unique. It makes us unique. And I'm always talking about Tucson's uniqueness and us being unique. I think there's a model out there for us that fits Tucson. I think it even probably folds into the discussion we just had with G-Flood. So that's kind of my input. And congratulations on bringing this forward. This is a novel idea. And, the world was created by people with novel ideas. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what makes it work. So let's go for it.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. I'm an advocate of big ideas and have supported many, many big ideas. The good thing is that we have the knowledge in our city manager and in Liz and her team, and the people that are contributing their time to our Equitable Housing and Development Commission to help us come up with an idea that is very specific to the needs of Tucsonans. And I too want to make sure that this moves quickly. The city of Tucson already owns land. We own land where we could start building affordability as soon as we find a structure that makes sense for us. So, I'm looking forward to the possibilities that this idea brings. Any others on my colleagues would want to add anything? Mr. Ortega.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council, and thank you all for the vision. I think the bottom line is how we, as a community, through your leadership, address this need. So what I would suggest, Liz listed the next steps to comment during her presentation in terms of some of the next things that we can look at. What I would suggest is that let us look at that, and there are some pieces where I think this conversation needs to be rehat, if you will, some specificity with regard to the council's and the mayor, your vision, so that we can start to put forth more specificity in terms of potential projects. So the vision is kind of up here, and that's great. But now it's the conversation around specific types of projects. So, for example, Mayor, you mentioned we own land. Absolutely. And so we can start looking at what is the sweet spot in terms of size of project that could make that make sense, right? So we have those discussions, and we can do that as staff, and we will look at that. Ultimately, the vehicle, as Councilmember Ulick mentioned, will be a function of the type of project. So a CDC is one vehicle, utilizing existing infrastructure through the nonprofit communities and other infrastructure. But don't forget, you're also the housing authority. So that's another model, that's another opportunity. So we will explore all of those together, and it might be that we'll bring you different types of projects that will use different pieces of those vehicles. So it could be a combination of a nonprofit and a CDC. It could be a combination of the CDC and the HA. So we will bring that back to you, Mayor, and I'm very clear on how the vision will be translated into those working pieces, and we'll certainly bring that back to you for consideration down the road. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ortega. So motion second on the floor, discussion had. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much, Liz, and I want to give a special thanks to my community engagement advisor, Genesis Cubillas, for helping with all things housing and community development. With that, I'd like to move on to item 10, which is the electric vehicle readiness roadmap. Councilmember Ulick and I have requested time to discuss the electric vehicle readiness roadmap and any necessary code changes. Councilmember Ulick.
Thank you, Mayor, and I know that we have staff ready to present further information, but I'm really proud to help move this forward with you. As you all know, Councilmember Durham was a great leader on this issue as well, and he and Sarah on our staff have really done some great work in concert with the team of the city. But Councilmember Durham was and is a big champion of electrifying the city's fleet as a climate mitigation effort. About a third of our region's annual greenhouse gas emissions are from transportation still. And so we want to use all the tools that are available to us to eliminate those greenhouse gas emissions, and the EV roadmap can really help get us there. So the details will be important as we hear those. But we really want Tucson to be able to lead in the conversion to electric vehicles. And unfortunately, most Arizona jurisdictions are not well situated to do so. That's why we need an EV roadmap, and we need to be competitive going after federal infrastructure funds, which we anticipate will be on the table very shortly. So the roadmap is so important, given the leadership of the Biden-Harris administration, to invest in local EV grids, and it's critical that we get a couple of the items in the roadmap moving sooner as opposed to later. So I can comment further and offer a motion after we hear from our staff on the EV roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ulick, and precisely wanted to invite Councilmember Ulick and her staff to participate in the creation of the working draft of the EV readiness roadmap. I have to give credit to my climate and sustainability advisor, Fatima Luna, who has been working on this EV readiness roadmap with the help of Chief of Staff to Councilmember Ulick and Chief of Staff to previously Councilmember Durham. I wanted to make sure that I honored the work that Councilmember Durham had put into this, as well as his staff's work into it. And yes, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this particular item to the table for my colleagues to give direction on is because the Biden plan for American jobs is coming. He's presented the American Jobs Plan to Congress, and it is a unique opportunity for the city of Tucson to advance the electrification of the transportation system here in our city. And we need this particular roadmap and plan to be ready when the American Jobs Plan is passed and there is availability of funding for the city of Tucson to tap into. Again, the plan will invest billions of dollars in electric vehicle infrastructure and EV rebates and tax incentives for consumers. So electrifying transit, our transit fleet, our school buses, as well as our vehicle fleet in the city of Tucson will make sense. So with that, I'd like to invite both Councilmember Ulick's Chief of Staff, Sara Lanias, and my Climate and Sustainability Advisor, Fatima Luna, to present a very, very short presentation on the EV readiness roadmap. So with that, I'd like to invite them both on screen and to do the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Mayor and Council. I'm going to pull up our slide deck here and share my screen. And Fatima, if you want to go ahead and get us started.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. For members of the public just tuning in who might not know who we are, I am Fatima Luna, the Climate and Sustainability Advisor to Mayor Regina Romero.
And I am Chief of Staff to Councilmember Karen Ulick. My name is Sara Lanias. And we want to kind of just situate you with the guiding principles that are shown here that really illustrate the big picture goals and approaches that are woven throughout the EV roadmap. Critically, we are bringing the EV roadmap before you today to set the city of Tucson up for success. And specifically, Mayor and Council have set bold and necessary goals to reach carbon neutrality by 2030. And that cannot happen without electrifying our city fleet. Addressing climate change and eliminating greenhouse gas emissions is good for our health and our economy. The car industry is quickly moving towards price parity between traditional gas-powered vehicles and EVs, and many manufacturers have already announced they will only produce EVs in the next 10 to 20 years. We just simply can't allow Tucson to be left behind. And most importantly, as you heard, adopting and implementing this plan will position Tucson to benefit from future federal infrastructure investments.
So what is the EV roadmap? The EV roadmap provides a holistic and integrated path forward for the city of Tucson to begin the process of creating an equitable EV grid and just transition to transportation based on renewable energy. It includes thematic areas, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. These areas, including anything from outreach and education to policies and incentives, have related actions that will guide the city and our partners to shift public and private sector practices to support EV conversion. Specifically, the roadmap outlines a series of actions to increase EV technologies and innovations in the Tucson market, as well as promote greater electric vehicle and their charging infrastructure for Tucson residents. Each action, as you can see, has different timelines, given that every aspect of the roadmap is progressive. As you can see in our graphic, the immediate, short-term, medium-term, and long-term timeframes build off each other.
Thank you, Fatima. I want to just kind of direct you to kind of the road ahead in the next 6 months. The city will establish a central EV website with resources and relevant information, conduct a charging demand analysis so that we have an understanding of what the needs are and will be, and specifically so that we understand the high demand that will happen within multifamily, workplace, and kind of public spaces. It will also allow us to benchmark the city's vehicle fleet EV needs and opportunities, and to amend and clarify city policies to allow greater EV charging. Some of the kind of first pieces that we'll look at with that is EV readiness ordinances. We will also be looking at how to establish, expand, and enforce EV parking rules. So with that really quick overview, we want to wrap up our presentation and allow time for questions. And we thank you very much for your attention today.
Thank you, Fatima, and thank you, Sarah, and thank you for your partnership in putting this presentation together, and of course, all of the previous work that needs to happen in order for such a forward-thinking and forward-looking policy such as the EV readiness roadmap to happen in the city of Tucson. I did also want to add, besides being ready and prepared with an EV readiness roadmap in the city of Tucson, this is the right thing to do for our environment, right? It's first and most importantly, the right thing to do for our environment, and we have to lead by example. I did want to give credit as well to the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project that has been helping my staff, and I really going through this process, getting ourselves ready, but lots of kudos and hard work to Fatima Luna. What I did want to make sure that today prepares us for as well is that we have EV ready building codes. The building codes are going to be very, very important because they address the needs of all property types, including multifamily, single family, and commercial buildings in the city of Tucson. And those codes need to be worked on immediately, parallel with the roadmap that we have in front of us. So with that, Councilmember Ulick, I know you have a motion to direct staff to move forward.
Yes, Mayor Romero, I believe the motion captures that. Let me know, but I would move that we adopt the EV roadmap and direct staff to begin the stakeholder process on the EV readiness ordinance changes and to begin efforts to conduct a demand analysis. Further, I would ask that staff coordinate these efforts with the mayor's office as well as the Ward 3 office.
I'll second that.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Good job.
Great job, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah and Fatima.
All righty, we move back into the regularly scheduled items on the agenda that we skipped. We're going over to item 5. I hope our Tucson Water folks are ready. Item 5, staff has the quarterly update on PFAS. Mr. Manager.
Mayor, members of the council, this again is the quarterly update. I'll turn it over to John Kamick, our interim director of water.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and council members. I will be discussing the quarterly update on the occurrence of PFAS in the Tucson aquifer. This quarterly update on activities related to PFAS was an original request made by Councilmember Fimbres of Ward 5 last winter. Since that request, this will be Tucson Water's 5th quarterly update, focusing on the time frame of January through March of 2021. First and foremost, Tucson Water's water is safe. The Water Department continues to be proactive in investigating and removing any water sources within our water system that may have been impacted by perfluorinated compounds. We continue to sample our water sources and have established extremely conservative operational standards for our wells. The standards used by Tucson Water have been created by reviewing the available information on how other states are dealing with PFAS in their water supplies. We have modeled our standards at some of the lowest levels we have seen. To date, 24 of our production wells continue to be preemptively shut down or placed in a restricted status due to the varying presence of PFAS in groundwater. This has remained unchanged since the previous quarterly report. As part of this departmental update, Tucson Water has taken hundreds of water samples throughout the first quarter of 2021 and continue to do so today. These samples are from production wells, monitor wells, and samples to verify the operational conditions of the Tucson Airport Remediation Project, also known as TARP. This sampling during the first quarter of 2021 has resulted in over 4,800 results that have been reviewed and documented. Now for a brief update on what's been occurring near Davis-Monthan last quarter. The Arizona Department of Environmental Quality has been working on a site investigation and eventual mitigation plan for PFAS impacts to the Tucson Water Central well field. The area of investigation is occurring north and northwest of the airbase. ADEQ is now in the process of developing a treatment site to begin mitigating high concentrations of PFAS in the aquifer just north of the base. They are using the information from their borings as well as data from other Tucson water sites to assist in delineating the groundwater impact. Based on their timeline, which is part of the council materials, full-scale treatment plans should occur by this summer. Again, the department is very appreciative of the state of Arizona's efforts in this by providing skilled staff and the necessary funding to continue to do the investigation of the area of concern. Also during last quarter, the Air Force Civil Engineering Center has maintained communication with ADEQ on the efforts in the area on the base itself. Since completion of the relative risk assessment that was done in the fall of 2020, the AFCEC has shared geologic information with ADEQ and is in the process of drafting a remedial investigation plan for the base. On February 18th, the Ward 6 office hosted a presentation by both ADEQ and the folks working at Davis-Monthan on the status of their respective investigations. Those presentation materials are also part of this quarterly council packet. Moving west to the Tucson Airport Remediation Project, we have a few updates from there to discuss. First and foremost, the water from the TARP plant continues to be of high quality. In February of 2021, the granular activated carbon in the treatment process, the same carbon that is used to sequester any PFAS compounds, was changed out in all 8 vessels. This preemptive change in carbon assures that the water from the treatment process remains treated for PFAS as it's delivered to the potable system. We are planning for another full change out of the carbon from the treatment plant to occur later this summer. Also related to TARP in the last quarter, Tucson Water continues to work with EPA on a focused feasibility study. This study provides the EPA the information that may help expedite the change in beneficial use for the water that comes from the TARP plant. The current beneficial use for the facility is that the water is directly delivered to the potable system. An accepted change to the beneficial use for the water may be to allow Tucson Water the flexibility in the future to deliver that water to different end uses like the reclaimed water system instead of the potable system. Tucson Water and its consultant team is finalizing a design and project that will provide the infrastructure necessary to take water from TARP and place it into the reclaimed water system. Activities related to that project are expected to begin this summer. UCAP meetings continue to be held virtually, with the last one occurring on January 20th, and the next one is actually scheduled for tomorrow evening. Tucson Water will be there to present. So, Honorable Mayor and members of council, that concludes this quarterly update on PFAS in the Tucson area, and I'll be willing to entertain any questions. Thank you.
John, can you tell me a little bit about if we need EPA's approval before we begin the TARP to reclaim water system at the Santa Cruz River?
We are working with EPA to make sure that that's part of the feasibility study, so the EPA is fully aware and part of our information provided to them that by taking it to the reclaim system, we'll have the option to either take it to the river or take it to the reclaimed water system itself. So that'll give us that flexibility, and they're fully aware of that.
Okay, excellent.
Yep.
Do we have a timeline? Do you know if we have a timeline at all?
We were hoping to get final comments from them this summer. So we're hoping the EPA approval for the project will occur in the next several months. The project itself will probably take 12 to 16 months to complete, to allow us that flexibility.
Okay, thank you, John. And I do see Councilmember Fimbres' hand up, as well as Councilmember Kozachik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the mayor and council be reminded about the continued outreach by Tucson Water to communities potentially affected by near wells that have PFOS?
That's Councilmember Fimbres. Tucson Water continues to work with ADEQ, PDEQ, and the other agencies in the area, particularly around the airport, and providing any information and assistance to customers or constituents that have concerns about PFAS in the groundwater in those areas. PDEQ is primarily taking the lead on communicating directly with those residents in that area, and ADEQ is supporting that with the investigations north of the airport.
I know you've been working in Arizona Bilingue and all that Tucson to get the message out to the monolingual community also. Thank you, John, for your advocacy in this area. Thank you. And the 3M lawsuit, you mentioned it, but we're still just waiting for more evidence to come in.
Yes, Councilmember Fimbres. Yeah, they're still in the discovery phase, as I understand it, with all the plaintiffs that are involved in the case, as well as there's potentially more defendants that are being included on the other side as well.
Thank you, John.
Before I go to Councilmember Kozachik, I do see Mike Rankin's hand up. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. And John, that was a good answer in terms of the status of the litigation. In addition to the discovery process being ongoing, what's really happening is that the court is trying to narrow down what will be the bellwether cases, the cases that are examples of the best types of claims, et cetera, in the multi-district litigation. They're trying to narrow it down to something like 10 cases that would move forward and be selected as the bellwether cases. But just to give you an idea of the timing of that, no one is expecting even the bellwether cases to be set for a trial date until at least 2022.
Wow. Councilmember Kozachik.
I was going to ask about the bellwether status. 2022 is not real encouraging, though. John, in your material that you sent out, communication with DM, it says that the AFFF storage and removal locations and the hangars with fire suppression systems are not included for additional investigation. Since we know that AFFF is a source of PFAS, why aren't those being included for additional investigation? Seems like they're a slam dunk.
Councilmember Kozachik, members of council, yeah, that is an item that we're in communication with ADEQ on. ADEQ has provided the primary responses to the activities happen at Davis-Monthan, and both ADEQ and Tucson Water are quick to point out that they're not, it doesn't appear that they are investigating those sites, so we're pointing that out. Yeah.
Can we compel that investigation to happen? Because we know they're going to come up with high concentrations.
That I'm not entirely sure if we can compel that. Those would be on-base activities.
Mike, Chris Avery, are we just out of that? Do we have any leverage?
Councilmember Kozaczek, members of the Mayor and Council, I don't know. I think I know the answer, but I'm not going to guess on something like this. So let me follow up on it and get back to the governing body.
Yeah, I think I know the answer too, but thanks.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Alrighty. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate the presentation and keeping us well informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to item 6. Time has been set aside for discussion of the planning and implementation of construction projects using Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program funds. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So there's two parts to this. The first is the process for establishing projects. It's outlined in your materials. Staff and I are available to answer any questions. And then the second is the allocation of $84,000 for Gunny Barreras Park. Again, that information and the map, there's a nice map included in the materials that outlines where the investment would be made. So, Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
Is there a presentation that staff want to present on this?
We're happy to do that, John. I believe that's you.
Mr. Manager, it's going to be Mr. McAdams if he's available.
I'm sorry. It's
Hello, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. My name is James McAdam. I'm the the superintendent of public information and conservation for Tucson Water. And I have just 3 short slides for you to summarize what's in the materials. If you just give me one moment to share this. All right, you should be looking at a presentation. Is it showing up? Okay.
Yes, we do have it.
All right. So just to summarize, there's nothing here that's not in your materials already, but I just wanted to post this for the simplicity of discussion. The intent of coming back to you all today was to provide you with our proposal and get your input on the approval of capital projects for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Fund. We're in a 3-year pilot period ending June of 2023. So the approximate amount of money that we're talking about is $7 to $7.5 million to be spent in capital projects. We're proposing to allocate those equally between the wards and the mayor's office, and similar to how the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Mini Grants program is allocated. And as far as an approval process, what we've proposed is that any project happening in a particular ward would need to be authorized by that council member to move into the design phase to expend design funds, and that anything to move into construction to use those funds would need to come to the full mayor and council by the consent agenda. Moving to the next slide. In terms of within the wards and for the mayor's office for citywide, in terms of how staff would be working with you all to prioritize these projects, the thing that makes them most cost effective is when we can leverage on top of projects that are already planned, already in the pipeline. So we're in the process of looking at Prop 407 projects, the Parks and Connections, Prop 101, anywhere where the asphalt is actually being completely removed and rebuilt. We found that as a new potential opportunity. Pima County Regional Flood Control District projects, community development block grants, anywhere the city is turning earth, we're looking at that as a potential leveraging opportunity. Second, we have, thanks to you, Mayor Romero, and your staff, bringing the tree equity score methodology from American Forests. We have landed on a really excellent composite measure that looks at our existing tree canopy, existing heat islands, as well as demographic and socioeconomic data to create a prioritization map. and each ward has high priority areas. So we have no shortage of those, as you all are well aware. So that will be a primary lens that we'll be looking at for where we put our investigation efforts and creating a pipeline of projects. And finally, we're really looking for projects that the public can see the benefit. Shading popular sidewalks, transit stops, addressing localized flooding, nuisance flooding, and creating demonstration sites at popular areas like a Reed Park or Sentinel Peak Park, where people can really see and learn about what is green infrastructure. Why do I care? How do I benefit from it? So that's the prioritization. And this final slide, it's a lot to look at, but it's in your materials. It's in the public materials. Just to summarize the proposal for Gunny Barreras Park, how we landed on this, why is this coming to you first? This is the very first of the large total park redos that are part of Prop 407. So it's a really excellent leveraging opportunity. We are able to get into the design process early on. So we're not impacting the schedule of construction. We're not slowing that down at all. And we were able to get to work with the designers really closely. And also, this is squarely in the middle of one of the areas of the city that is in the greatest need, some of the lowest tree equity score neighborhoods in the city. So it really meets a lot of different criteria. Finally, just what is being proposed is some stormwater harvesting off of Campbell Avenue onto the property of the park itself to supplement irrigation to the planned vegetation. We're looking at harvesting water off the pickleball and basketball courts. And our initial concept that we've shared with you adds about 30 trees to the existing plan, which was about 150 trees. Currently, there are 6 trees on the park, so it's a significant improvement. But we've actually been revisiting with the design team and are looking at adding hopefully up to a couple dozen more trees. So up to 50 additional trees on top of the 150 that were planned with the Prop 407 improvements. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
That is great and amazing, wonderful news. It's more than 200 trees, from what I hear, that you're going to be adding to that park. I'm really happy that you're using the tree equity score map that American Forests put together. They developed the tree equity score methodology, which basically has into its methodology low-income communities and vulnerable communities. And so it does bring an equity lens into how we are going to invest. My question is, these trees are going to be counted as the Tucson Million Trees Initiative as well, right?
That's right.
That is correct, Mayor.
Alrighty, excellent. And you talked about every single ward in the city has orange areas in the tree equity score map. This indicates the heat island effect in that area, right? Do we kind of have precise spaces within the city of Tucson so that you and the council member in that ward can focus their attention in their areas of most need?
Mayor, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, yes, we do. Each neighborhood has been scored with a tree equity score, and within those neighborhoods, we have further refined data so we can look even more closely. But the tree equity score map that's referenced in your materials makes it very simple to zoom in very quickly and get the lay of the land within each ward of where those priority areas are.
Excellent. Councilmember Fimbres, you have your hand up.
Yes, I want to thank James for his efforts on this area, this project. it's gonna move right now with the Prop 407 dollars, and we're already renovating Gunny Paredes Park, and this will help. And not only your mission, Madam Mayor, of 100 trees, 1 million trees to plant. This will help with that big portion. And you know, we did some things at Tom Price already, planted a lot of trees there, but now this will add another one. So I think as wards, we're leading the charge for this for you. And I want to thank James and his leadership for coming up with and working this. And it's not going to affect the timeline, correct, James, of what we already have projected? Because the neighbors, the students and the school, Sunnyside School, is really relying on this park.
Councilmember Fimbres, it's not going to affect the schedule.
Good, good. Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to continue their work on the GSI projects at Gunny Paredes Park in Ward 5 and to report back to Mayor and Council in 90 days.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate your work on this. Thank you. We move on to item 7. Let's see. Item 7, staff will present the results of the economic analysis for the CIS Global Primary Jobs Incentive application. Mr. Manager.
Mayor Barb Coffey will present the results of the report. Thank you.
Great.
Barb.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Honorable Mayor, members of council, good afternoon again. The item before you this afternoon is related to the expansion of CIS Global, a Tucson headquartered manufacturing company that makes mechanical assemblies and electronic products. They serve the data center industry worldwide. CIS Global is considering expanding and relocating its Tucson operations to a 31,000 square foot facility that would be at 1601 West Commerce Court in Ward 1. This is a $5.3 million project, which would create 102 new jobs. 23 positions of those 102 will have average wages in excess of $54,932. As you know, our program requirements typically call for 25 jobs at that wage level or higher. While the company is 2 jobs short of the threshold for our primary jobs incentive, staff does recommend consideration of a prorated incentive in recognition of the creation of quality jobs in one of the city's target industries. Mayor and council do have the flexibility to authorize a partial or prorated incentive if the project demonstrates positive benefit and closely aligns with program goals. The attached economic impact analysis shows that direct revenues to all jurisdictions over 5 years is more than $530,000 and indirect revenues over 5 years at more than $3 million. The value of a full benefit to CIS Global would be estimated at $22,100. As an example, a prorated award at 90% would be $20,332. With your direction, we would staff would bring back a development agreement for your consideration on May 4th, and I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Any questions? I don't hear any, Barbara. Do you need a specific direction?
It would be good to know if you want to go with the recommended prorated incentive for the quality jobs that are created by this project. And I do see, looks like there's a hand up now. Yep.
Oh, I do see Councilmember Santa Cruz. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Barbara, and the Office of Economic Initiatives team, and to Shubayu and Chakraborty of CIS Global for briefing us and keeping us in the loop of the project. So I'd like to give direction to EI to move forward with their analysis or any remaining due diligence for the primary jobs incentives for CIS Global.
And I'll second that.
So there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Cunningham.
Firms like CIS actually do a pretty good job around the country. They're actually a really big there's a really big piece to a federal program called reshoring that started in the Obama administration. It hasn't been as well managed with the past administration, but I'm sure with the current administration, it will go back to improving. Usually they need local partners to ensure that they are on that piece. I urge our economic development team to aid CIS in whatever they can to be part of the reshoring program.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. And I just want to say that I'm very excited about this expansion of CIS inside the city of Tucson, very specific to what the primary jobs incentive program was designed to do, to encourage not just the attraction, but the expansion of companies that are already with us and that are doing incredible manufacturing work here in the city of Tucson. So with that, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
We move on to item 11. Item 11, Councilmember Kosacic has requested a discussion regarding the initiation of the process to establish an NPZ for the Rincon Heights and Pie Allen neighborhoods. Councilmember Kosacic.
Yeah, thanks. This process actually began pre-COVID. A committee that was made up of Rincon Heights and Pie Allen members began talking about how to put design criteria into place to help guide development and preserve the character of their area. In the areas in the neighborhoods immediately surrounding campus, we have seen an influx of flippers, not locals. This is our attempt to preserve the integrity of the historic built environment, specifically around campus in these two neighborhoods right now. This group, we've worked together very closely. They've conducted multiple public meetings, made a real extensive effort to include as many property owners as possible. And the draft design manual is being created right now. So I let them know that given all of that work and the prep work they've done, this is the time to initiate the formal process. So I'm just asking Mayor and Council to support to direct staff, to the appropriate city staff, to work with these neighborhoods, finalize the design manual, and begin the formal rezoning process, which will include more public outreach.
Second?
Do you make that in the form of a motion, Councilmember?
Yes.
I'll second, Mayor.
There's a second. So there's a motion and a second.
And I do have one question / comment for staff. It's related to the information that we put about NPZs on that's posted on our site. And there are a series of questions, and one page says, are projects subject to neighborhood review? And the answer is no. You know, we've had this conversation multiple times before, and short of a formal neighborhood review, we could save property owners contemplating renovations a lot of grief if we required a meeting with neighborhood leadership prior to them initiating their design review. This isn't so we can stop projects, but as we've said multiple times, it's so that the people doing the renovations understand the design criteria. And it is not uncommon that, especially if the new owner coming in is a flipper or somebody who's not familiar with the conditions around some of our historic neighborhoods, that they're just going to come in and blow and go. And far too often we've had to tell developers that you've got to pull out some of the construction that you just put in order to meet the historic, maintain the integrity of the historic areas. More importantly, though, oftentimes the work is done, the damage is done, and we've already delisted a property. So this is not a part of this motion, but I would like some direction from staff, from Scott, from Mike, from someone in staff to how do we compel that early consultation, because that's only going to lead to better outcomes. It's not an attempt to stop projects, but really to give direction to the developers as to, you're in an NPZ, there are design criteria, you're going to have to adhere to them. So let's nip that bud early in the process instead of later.
Okay. So, Mayor, Councilmember Kozaczek, we understand the point, and I'll make sure that's part of the discussion we have as we support PDSD and how this process moves forward. Just one issue of reality, I guess, is that in the example that you talk about, that the folks who don't know the rules just go without knowing what those design criteria are. If that's the situation, they're probably also not going to know that there's a requirement if we create one for a meeting, a pre-meeting with the neighborhood representatives. But we certainly understand your point, which is how best can we get what the requirements are out there so that the people who are subject to them know what they are before they start any type of project.
We can certainly let them know that that requirement exists at the time of permitting. But you understand the point.
So is there a process, Mike or Mr. Ortega?
So with the action today, it would initiate the process. And so that will move forward, and in our discussions with staff, we will incorporate the direction and the discussion that was held by the mayor and council today.
Okay. Councilmember Kozaczek, does that satisfy your concern? Okay.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. So you have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We move on to item 12. Are there any state and national legislation or regional committee issues for discussion?
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, on the report today, there are 3 bills. Looking for direction from you on those bills. Happy to answer any questions. If you don't have any questions, just would respectfully request a motion to approve the recommendations in the report.
Andrew, can you describe the bills that you have? I know that there's SB 1713, SB 1485, and SB 1106, I believe. Are there any others that you wanted us to consider the position on?
There are, Mayor. Thank you. So first, 1713 and 1485 are bills the mayor and council have already taken positions on. So there's no need to take any further action on those. There's Senate Bill 1106. That's on the list today, as well as a couple of other bills that have been requested. 1106 would require county election officials to remove voters from the PEVL, the permanent early voter list, if a county elections official has credible information that a voter may not be a resident of that county anymore. It sets what we would consider to be a pretty vague standard for removing someone from the PEVL. And so for that reason, we would recommend opposition consistent with prior mayor and council direction in support of the PEVL and trying to make sure that people have as much access to the PEVL and to voting as possible.
I make the motion, Madam Mayor, to oppose 1106, SB 1106. That's my motion.
So there's a motion, and is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on 1106? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. And opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, there are 2 other bills on the list. The first one is Senate Bill 1456. This is a bill that would prohibit Arizona schools from teaching certain types of certain subjects under what they consider sex education, and some of the areas that they would prohibit unless a parent opts in. Currently, the requirement is the parents opt out, but it would restrict education in the areas of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and HIV/AIDS. The Arizona Human Rights Campaign says that this is a discriminatory bill, and I'm just going to quote from them, that adds additional barriers to inclusive sexual education curriculum, prevents LGBTQ children from being able to learn critically important health information about themselves as they grow up. Mayor and council have opposed similar legislation in the past. Other organizations that oppose this bill include the ACLU of Arizona, Planned Parenthood, Equality Arizona Action, Human Rights Campaign, the Arizona Department of Education, the Arizona School Administrators and Arizona School Boards Association, Children's Action Alliance, and other groups. Staff recommends opposition to the bill.
Madam Mayor, I move that we oppose SB 1456 also. That's my motion.
There's a motion and a second. Councilmember Ulick, you have your hand up?
Actually, I was going to ask about that very bill as well as the prohibition on the county's measure against conversion therapy, and I just couldn't recall whether we had already taken a position, but I bet we have.
Have we, Andrew?
I'm sorry, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Ulick, I need I'll take a look at the number of the bill that you're referencing on the counties. I'm not sure if we have yet or not. If we haven't, I will bring that one to Mayor and Council as well. Or if you'd like, if you have the number of the bill, you can take the position now and we can record that.
I don't have the number of the bill, but in essence, what it does is it prohibits the county from banning conversion therapy, which inflicts trauma obviously on LGBTQ youth. So I don't have the bill number, but I certainly can get that to you if my colleagues would entertain a motion to oppose that measure.
Absolutely.
I'll make that motion.
No, she just did.
I'll second that. Thank you.
I think it's 1426.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's whatever the number is, Andrew, we're taking a position against it. So as long it's SB 1269, I believe it is.
SB 1269.
I think that's what the bill number is. But all those in favor of opposition into SB 1456 and then this additional bill signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alrighty, motion passes. Any others, Andrew?
Yes, Mayor. One last bill, Senate Bill 1457. This is an anti-choice bill at the legislature. It would extend certain types of rights, immunities, and privileges to any fetus at any stage of development. It would also make it a felony for any medical professional who doesn't report that an abortion has taken place, and they could be fined up to $10,000, among other provisions. This bill is opposed by the Arizona Medical Association, NARAL, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Arizona National Organization for Women, Planned Parenthood, and other groups. Staff recommends opposition.
So is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to oppose, Mayor.
Alrighty.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussions? All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Anything else, Andrew?
No, Mayor, those are all the bills I have on my list this week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for bringing these bills to our attention. It's very, very concerning. The anti-choice bills, anti-LGBTQ right bills, and voter disenfranchising bills that we are seeing come out of the state legislature. And, you know, I just sent a letter to our state leaders expressing my opposition to these voter suppression bills. It is anti-American to pass these bills anywhere in our country. So we're seeing these bills popping all over the place. More than 43 states are passing anti-voting bills in their states. So it's very, very concerning. Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate your presentation. We move on to item 13. Does anyone have any items to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, we move on to item 13. Does anyone have items to, oh no, sorry, item 14, does anyone have any future agendas? Alrighty, hearing none, study session is adjourned. The regular session begins at 5:30 p.m. The next meeting will be Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. We will see you in about an hour, 20 minutes. Thank you all so much. Take care.